Kill the mother, bring me the boy alive. Calloway said it the way other men order coffee, sliding the photograph across the table, tapping the child's face with one finger. And every armed man in that room went cold, because the boy in the picture had Roman Vance's eyes, Roman Vance's jaw, Roman Vance's blood, and none of them had known the most feared boss in Chicago had a son, but Calloway knew. Calloway had known for weeks, and he smiled because a man who'd fear nothing now had everything to lose. If you love stories about love, betrayal, and second chances, subscribe now and follow this all the way to the end. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hadn't stopped in 3 days, and Lena Carter had stopped noticing it. She wiped down table 9 for the 4th time that shift, not because it was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do when her mind wanted to wander somewhere she couldn't afford to go. Mom, is it true that octopuses have 3 hearts? Lena looked up. Her son sat at the counter, a library book open in front of him, his chin resting in one small hand. 6 years old, and he read books that grown men avoided. That's what I hear, baby. 2 of them stop beating when it swims. That seems like bad engineering. Noah frowned at the page. Why would you build an animal that way? I don't think anyone built it, sweetheart. It just grew that way. Everything's built by something, Noah said, and went back to his book. Lena smiled, but there was an ache underneath it that had lived in her chest for 7 years. Because sometimes her son said things that weren't his. Sometimes he tilted his head a certain way, or narrowed his eyes when he was thinking, and for one terrible second, she saw a ghost sitting at her counter instead of a little boy. She never told him. She never told anyone. "Order up, Lena," Marcus called from the kitchen window. He was the cook, the owner, the closest thing she had to family in this whole city. "Table 12 wants their fries crispy. Told him I only got one setting and it's Chicago." "You're a poet, Marcus. I know it." She carried the plates out, weaving through the tables like she'd done 10,000 times before, and she thought not for the first time that this was enough. This life, this little restaurant with its cracked vinyl booths and its flickering sign. Her son. Her tips folded into an envelope for his school. It wasn't the life she'd dreamed of at 23, but she'd survived. She'd rebuilt. And a woman who rebuilds herself from nothing learns to be grateful for a roof that doesn't leak too badly. "Miss..." An old man at the corner table raised his coffee cup. "Could I trouble you for a refill? These knees don't chase waitresses like they used to." "You keep flirting like that, Mr. Delgado, and I'll have to charge you extra." "At my age, honey, flirting is the only exercise I got left." She was laughing when the door opened, and the laughter died in her throat. She didn't see him first. She heard the room change. The low hum of conversation dipped the way a crowd goes quiet when something enters that doesn't belong. She felt the cold air push in from the street, felt the rain on it, and she turned toward the door with the coffee pot still in her hand. 4 men filled the entrance, then 2 more behind them. They wore dark coats that fit too well to be cheap, and they moved with the kind of stillness that only came from men who had learned to watch everything at once. One of them scanned the room corner to corner, exit to exit, and something in Lena's stomach dropped through the floor. But it wasn't the guards that froze her. It was the man at the center of them. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe he only seemed that way because of how the others stood back from him, giving him space the way people give space to something dangerous. His hair was darker now, threaded with gray at the temples. There was a scar along his jaw that hadn't been there before. Everything about him had hardened, sharpened, been carved down to something colder, but the eyes were the same. Lena stopped breathing. "That's not possible," she whispered. "That's not possible." The coffee pot slipped in her hand. She caught it before it fell, but hot liquid splashed across her wrist and she barely felt it. Her whole body had gone somewhere else, somewhere 7 years back to a rainy night, not unlike this one, to a phone call to a stranger's voice telling her that Roman Vance was dead and she should stop looking. She had believed them. God help her, she had believed them. And now he was standing in her restaurant alive, and his eyes were moving across the room, the same way his men's eyes moved, and any second now, those eyes were going to land on her. "Mom?" Noah's voice small and confused. "Mom, your arm is red." She grabbed his shoulder without thinking, an animal reflex, a mother's instinct to shield. "It's fine, baby. Keep reading." But it was too late, because when she grabbed him, she moved. And when she moved, Roman saw her. She watched it happen. She watched the recognition hit him like a physical blow. His whole body went rigid. The coldness in his face cracked straight down the middle, and underneath it was something raw, something young, something she remembered from before he became whatever he'd become. "Lena," he said. He didn't shout it. He barely said it at all. But she heard it across the whole room like he'd screamed it. The restaurant had gone silent. Mr. Delgado was watching. Marcus had come to the kitchen window and stopped there drying a plate that was already dry, his eyes moving between Lena and the men at the door. "You know these fellas, Lena?" Marcus asked carefully. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She was looking at a dead man, and the dead man was walking toward her, and every step he took, his eyes drifted a little to the left of her, toward the counter, toward the small boy with the library book. "Roman," she managed. "Stop, please." He stopped, but his eyes didn't. They had found Noah, and they stayed there, and Lena watched the exact moment the world ended. Noah looked up from his book, unbothered, curious the way he was curious about everything. He studied the tall stranger with the scar, and the tall stranger studied him back. And anyone in that room with eyes could see it. The same jaw, the same set of the brow, the same still watchful, too intelligent gaze, looking out from a 6-year-old face. Roman's breath left him. His hand came up halfway, then stopped hovering in the air like he'd forgotten how to finish the gesture. "How old?" Roman said. His voice wasn't working right. "How old is he?" "Roman." "How old is the boy Lena?" Louder now. The men behind him shifted. Noah looked at his mother. "Do you know him?" And that of all things was what broke her. Her son's simple question, so ordinary, so trusting. "Do you know him?" As if the answer could ever be simple. As if she could ever explain to her boy that the man in front of him was the reason he existed. The reason she still woke at 3 a.m. with her heart pounding. The reason she'd built her entire quiet life like a wall around a wound. "Noah," she said, and her voice shook. "I need you to go to the kitchen with Marcus. Okay, right now." "But why?" "Please, baby." Marcus was already moving, already reaching over the counter. "Come on, little man. I got a job needs a smart fella. You ever fold a napkin into a swan?" "Swans don't fold," Noah said, but he slid off the stool. He gave Roman one more long look on his way past a look that lasted a half-second too long, a look that made Roman flinch like he'd been struck. Then the boy was gone through the swinging door, and it was just the two of them and the guards and a restaurant full of frightened strangers. 6, Lena said. "He's 6 years old." She watched Roman do the math. She watched 7 years collapse in his mind, watched him understand what 6 years old meant when they'd been together 7 years ago, watched him arrive at a truth that rearranged his entire face. "He's mine," Roman said. It wasn't a question. "Roman, he's mine." He took the step toward her, and the raw thing in his face was drowning under something else now, something older, something furious. 7 years, Lena. 7 years I thought you'd left, moved on, forgotten, and you had my son. You were dead! The words tore out of her before she could stop them, and half the restaurant jumped. "Do you understand? You were dead, Roman. They came to my door, 2 men in suits. They told me your body was found in the river. They told me to stop asking questions. They told me if I loved you, I'd let it go and let you rest. And I believed them. I mourned you. I buried you in my heart because I had no other way to bury you." Her chest was heaving. Somewhere behind her she could hear Noah's voice from the kitchen asking Marcus a question, and she prayed the boy couldn't hear his mother screaming. Roman had gone very pale. "Who?" he said. "Who came to your door?" "I don't know. I never saw them again. I was 24 and pregnant and alone, and the man I loved was at the bottom of a river, and I was supposed to just keep living." Her voice cracked. "So I did. I kept living. For him. For our son. And I built something clean Roman. Something safe. Something with no guns and no dark coats and no men standing by the door counting the exits. And now you walk into my restaurant 7 years later and you look at me like I'm the one who did something wrong. The room was so quiet she could hear the rain. Roman turned to one of his men, a short word low in a language she didn't know. The man nodded and stepped outside into the rain phone already at his ear. "What are you doing?" Lena said. "Roman, what are you doing?" "Making sure no one else knows what I just learned." Cold spread through her. "What does that mean?" He looked at her, and for the first time she saw not the boy she'd loved, and not the ghost she'd mourned, but the man he actually was now. The one who walked into rooms and made them go silent. The one whose name she was slowly realizing was probably not one you said out loud in this city. "It means," Roman said quietly, "that you have no idea what you've been walking around with for 6 years. It means my son has been sitting at a public counter in a public restaurant with your name on his birth certificate and my face on his own, and I only found him by accident. Which means anyone could have. Which means anyone still might. Nobody knows who his father is. I never told a soul. Not one Roman, not in 6 years. You didn't have to tell anyone." He stepped closer, and his voice dropped so low only she could hear it. "He wears my face, Lena. In my world, that's a death sentence and a ransom note stitched into one little boy." The strength went out of her knees. She caught herself on the edge of table 9. "You're scaring me." "Good," Roman said. "You should be scared. You should have been scared for 6 years, and it kills me that you weren't. Because it means you were alone with this, and no one was watching your door." Something moved across his face, grief and guilt and rage all fighting for the same space. "No one was watching your door, and I should have been. I should have been at your door every single night of his life." "You were dead," she whispered again, but this time it came out smaller because she was starting to understand that the story she'd been told wasn't the whole story, and the not knowing was worse than the grief had ever been. "I wasn't dead, Lena." He closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, there was a terrible tiredness in them. "I was taken. There's a difference, and I've spent 7 years learning exactly how big a difference it is." Behind them, the kitchen door swung open a few inches. Noah's face appeared in the gap, watching. Both of them saw him at the same time. And Roman Vance, feared across a city surrounded by armed men, changed completely. He crouched down slowly, lowering himself until he was closer to the boy's height, and when he spoke, his voice had gone gentle in a way that made Lena's heart break clean in half. "Hey," Roman said, "you must be Noah." Noah stepped out from behind the door, fearless. "You have a scar on your face." "I do." "Did it hurt?" "Yeah." Roman's throat worked. "Yeah, it hurt a lot." Noah considered this with the seriousness of a small judge. "My mom says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers." "Your mom is right." Roman's eyes flicked up to Lena, then back to the boy. "Your mom is very, very smart. You should always listen to her." Noah tilted his head. That tilt. That exact tilt. Lena watched Roman see it, and watched it nearly destroy him. "Are you a stranger?" Noah asked, and the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Roman opened his mouth, closed it. Lena saw him fight himself, saw the yes rise up and the no rise up behind it, saw a man trying to answer the single most impossible question he'd ever been asked by the single most important person he'd never known he had. "I knew your mom," Roman said finally, "a long time ago, before you were born." "Oh." Noah accepted this easily, the way children accept the small pieces of enormous truths. "Were you friends?" "Yeah," Roman said. His voice barely held. "We were friends." "Noah." Lena crossed the room and took her son's hand. "Go finish your book, okay? I need to talk to my old friend for a minute." Noah let himself be led back toward the counter, but he looked over his shoulder the whole way, and just before he sat back down, he said to no one in particular, "He looks like the drawing I did of my dad, in art class, when Mrs. Patterson said to draw our families." Lena's whole body turned to ice. Roman rose slowly to his feet. "You told him about me," Roman said. "No." Her voice was barely a breath. "No, I never told him anything. He asked once when he was 4 why he didn't have a dad. I told him his dad was a good man who couldn't be here. That's all. That's everything I ever said." "Then how—" "I don't know." She was crying now silently, the tears just spilling over without permission. "I don't know how he knows things, Roman. He just does. He's always been like that. He looks at people and he sees them. He looked at you the second you walked in, and I think part of him already knew." Roman stood there in the middle of the restaurant, a man who commanded armies completely undone by a 6-year-old and a crayon drawing. "I need to sit down," he said. He didn't sit down. He wasn't the kind of man who could sit down anymore, Lena understood. He was the kind of man who stayed on his feet in case the room turned on him. But he swayed slightly, and for one moment he was just Roman, just the boy who used to fall asleep with his head in her lap while she read out loud just the person she'd loved before the world took him and gave him back as something else. "Marcus," Lena called, not taking her eyes off Roman. "Can you close early, please?" Marcus looked at the men by the door, looked at his terrified customers, looked at Lena's face. He was a smart man. "Folks," he announced, "kitchen's having a situation. Everybody's meal is on the house tonight, but I'm going to need you to head on home. Careful in that rain." The customers didn't need to be told twice. Chairs scraped, coats were gathered. Mr. Delgado paused by Lena on his way out and put a wrinkled hand on her arm. "You need anything, honey?" the old man said quietly. "You got my number. Don't matter how big and scary a man's friends are. You got people." "Thank you, Mr. Delgado." She squeezed his hand. "Get home safe." And then they were gone, all of them. And it was just Lena and Roman and Noah and Marcus and 6 armed men and the rain drumming on the roof. Roman turned to the guard nearest him. "Watch the street, all of it. If a single car parks that shouldn't, I want to know before the engine's off." "Yes, sir." "Sir." Lena flinched at the word. It made it real in a way nothing else had. This wasn't a story someone had told her. This was who he was now. "You have to go," Lena said suddenly. "Roman, whatever this is, whatever you've become, you can't be here. You can't be near him. You said it yourself. Your face is a death sentence. Well, so is yours near my son. So please, please, just go and let me keep him safe the way I've kept him safe for 6 years." Roman looked at her for a long moment. "I can't do that," he said. "You have to." "Lena." He came closer, and he lowered his voice, and there was no coldness in it now, only a kind of desperate honesty. "You think I'm the danger. I understand why you think that. But I'm not the danger. I'm the only thing standing between him and the danger, and you don't even know it yet." "What are you talking about?" He hesitated. And Lena had known this man, once known every expression he owned, and she knew this one. It was the look he wore when he was deciding how much of a terrible truth to hand her. "There's a war coming," Roman said. "It's already started, actually. Someone has been moving against me for months. Someone patient. Someone who does his homework." He glanced toward the kitchen, toward the small boy sounding out a word about deep-sea creatures. "And a man who does his homework, Lena. A man who's been studying me for a year. If I found out about Noah by walking into the wrong restaurant on the wrong night, then I have to assume I'm not the only one who could." "No." She shook her head hard. "No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to walk in here after 7 years and turn my son's whole life into some mafia problem. He's a little boy. He reads about octopuses. He folds terrible paper swans. He is not part of your world." "He is now," Roman said softly. "The moment I recognized him, he was. And so were you. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry, but that's the truth. And I would rather you hate me for telling you the truth than smile at you while you walk into a fire." Lena sat down. Her legs simply wouldn't hold her anymore. She sat down in the corner booth where Mr. Delgado had been flirting with her 20 minutes and a whole lifetime ago. "I did everything right," she said. Her voice had gone flat and strange. "I disappeared. I changed my number. I moved cities. I never used your name. I raised him quiet and small and off the map. I did everything right, Roman, and it still wasn't enough." Roman sat down across from her slowly the way you sit near a wounded animal. "You did more than right," he said. "You did the impossible. You raised my son alone, believing I was dead, and you kept him safe for 6 years in a world that would eat him alive. Lena, look at me." She looked at him. "That boy in there is the best thing either of us has ever done, and I have spent 7 years thinking I had nothing left to lose. That was the only thing that made me useful in my world. A man with nothing to lose is a dangerous man." His jaw tightened. "You just gave me something to lose, and I need you to understand that changes everything. It changes what I'll do. It changes who I am. Because there is no version of me, no version that walks out that door and lets someone hurt him. The kitchen door swung open. Noah came out holding his book, and behind him Marcus followed his face carefully blank. "Mom," Noah said, "Marcus says we have to go with the man. Is that true?" Lena's eyes snapped to Roman. "I didn't tell him that," Roman said quickly. "Marcus," Lena stood. "What did you say to my son?" Marcus held up both hands. "I didn't say a word, Lena. I swear to you. Kid asked me if you two were going to fight. I said no, and then he said, 'We're going to have to go with him, aren't we?' And I said, 'I didn't know.' And he said..." Marcus stopped, swallowed. He said, "Yeah, we are, because the bad men already know." The restaurant went cold and still. Roman was on his feet before Marcus finished the sentence. "What did you just say?" "That's what he said," Marcus whispered. "I don't know what it means. I figured it was just kid stuff." Every man in the room had gone rigid. Roman crossed to his son in 3 strides and crouched down again, and this time his gentleness had a blade underneath it. "Noah," Roman said, "Buddy, that thing you just told Marcus about the bad men, why did you say that?" Noah looked at him with those clear, calm, impossible eyes. "There was a man outside," Noah said. "Before you came, he was in a gray car across the street. He took a picture of the window, of me and Mom." The boy shrugged the way children shrug at the incomprehensible. "He wasn't a customer. Customers look at the menu in the window. He only looked at us." Lena's hand flew to her mouth. Roman went absolutely still, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet and so controlled that it was more frightening than any shout could ever have been. "When?" Roman said. "When did you see the gray car?" "Before dinner, when it was still light a little." Noah frowned, working it out. He wrote something down, then he made a phone call. Then he drove away. Roman rose slowly to his full height. He turned to the guard by the window, and the guard was already moving, already speaking into his phone in that clipped foreign tongue. And outside in the rain, Lena could see the man scanning the street, scanning the rooftops, scanning everything. "Roman," she breathed, "what does it mean? What does it mean that a man took a picture of my son?" Roman didn't answer her right away. He was looking at Noah, and his face had gone through terror and rage. And out the other side, into something settled and cold and permanent, the face of a man who has just made a decision he will not unmake. "It means," Roman said, "that you were right. You did everything right and it still wasn't enough. And it means I was right too. I'm not the danger, Lena. I'm the wall between him and the danger. And the danger already found your window." He held out his hand to her. "I need you to trust the one man in this city you have every reason not to trust," Roman said. "Just for tonight, just long enough to get you both somewhere they can't reach. And then you can hate me all you want. You can scream at me every day for the next 50 years, and I will stand there and take it because I deserve all of it. But right now, tonight in this restaurant with a photograph of our son already in the wrong man's hands, I am asking you to trust me." Lena looked at his hand. 7 years she'd mourned this hand. 7 years she'd told her son his father was a good man who couldn't be here. She looked at Noah. Her boy stood there calm as ever watching them both, and he did the thing that finished her completely. He walked over and put his small hand into Roman's large one, all on his own. "It's okay, Mom," Noah said. "I think he's the dad from my drawing." Roman made a sound like something breaking. He closed his hand around his son's tiny fingers as if they were made of glass, as if the whole world had narrowed to that one point of contact, and his eyes came up to Lena's wet and steady and pleading. "Please," he said. And outside through the rain-streaked window, a pair of headlights slowed on the empty street. Slowed and stopped and did not turn off. Lena took his hand. "Get down," Roman said. He didn't raise his voice. That was the thing Lena would remember later, how quiet it all was. He simply said the words and moved at the same time, sweeping Noah behind the counter with one arm and pulling Lena down by the wrist with the other, and the whole room dropped like it had been rehearsed. "Roman, what?" The car outside didn't kill its lights. His men were already moving, 2 of them peeling toward the front, one toward the kitchen, the coordination of it so smooth it was terrifying. That's not a customer. That's not the police. That's someone deciding whether to come in. Deciding? They saw 6 of us through the window. They're doing the math. He pressed his back against the counter and pulled his phone halfway out thumb, moving across it. If the math says we're too many, they drive away and come back when we're gone. If the math says they've got the numbers, they come now. Noah crouched between them, calm, his library book still clutched to his chest. Mom, my heart is going really fast. I know, baby. I know. That's okay. Just stay small for me. Is the gray car man back? I don't know. It's not gray, Noah said. The one outside now, it's dark, black or blue. The gray one had a dent. Roman turned his head and looked at his son, and Lena saw something flicker behind his eyes, some private awe fighting its way up through the fear. You saw the color through the rain, Roman said. In the dark, from back here. I have good eyes. Yeah, Roman breathed. Yeah, you do. Marcus was flat on the floor by the kitchen door, and he lifted his head an inch. Lena, I got a shotgun in the back, behind the flower. Nobody move for the shotgun, Roman said without looking at him. You pull a gun in here and you turn a maybe into a definitely. Everybody stays exactly where they are, and we let them make the wrong choice. The seconds crawled. Rain on the roof, the buzz of the broken neon sign. Somewhere a refrigerator hummed. Lena held her son and counted his heartbeats through his back and prayed to a God she'd stopped talking to 7 years ago. Then the guard at the window said one word low, leaving. Roman closed his eyes for exactly 1 second. How many inside the car? 2 visible. Could be more low. Plate? Covered. Of course it was. Roman rose slowly, keeping himself between the window and the boy, and Lena understood that his body had positioned itself as a shield without him even seeming to think about it. That was instinct now. That was who he'd become. A man who put himself between bullets and the people behind him. They ran the numbers, Roman said. 6 of us, a closed restaurant, no clean exit for them. So they're going to come back when it's just you and Noah and a fry cook. That's what they do. They wait for the soft moment. He turned to Lena, and his face was carved out of stone. We don't give them a soft moment. We leave now, tonight, this minute. I have a lease. I have Noah's school. You have a photograph of your son in the hands of a man who wants to hurt me. Roman crouched back down to her level, and his voice gentled without losing its edge. Lena, everything you built, everything you're picturing right now, the school and the apartment and this restaurant, all of it is gone the second you understand what I'm telling you. Not because I'm taking it from you, because it was already gone the moment that camera flashed. I'm not the one who ended your quiet life. He is. I'm just the one telling you the truth about it. She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream at him that he didn't get to walk in and burn her whole world down after 7 years of absence. But she was looking at her son's too fast heartbeat and remembering the calm way he'd said the man only looked at us, and the fight went out of her. Where, she said, where would we even go? Somewhere I own that nobody knows I own. He was already helping her up, already guiding Noah toward the kitchen. It won't be forever. It won't even be safe forever if I'm honest with you, and I'm going to keep being honest with you because that's the only thing I have left to offer. But it's safer than a lit window on an empty street. Marcus scrambled to his feet. Lena, you don't have to go anywhere with these people. Say the word and I call the cops right now. Roman turned to him, and for the first time there was something almost kind in his face. You're a good man, Roman said. You've been good to her, and I'll never forget it, and you should call whoever you want the second we're gone. But listen to me carefully, because your life might depend on it. The men who took that photograph are not afraid of your police. Some of them are your police. When they come back and find her gone, you tell them the truth. You tell them a bunch of scary men came in and took her and you don't know where. That's not a lie. That's just you staying alive. You understand? Marcus's jaw worked. He looked at Lena. This the fellow you never talk about? Yeah, Lena whispered. This is him. Huh. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron, a nervous gesture, a man reaching for something ordinary in a moment that had none. For a dead guy, he's awful bossy. Despite everything, Lena almost laughed. Almost. Grab whatever you can carry in under 2 minutes, Roman told her. Documents, medicine, anything for the boy he can't sleep without. Leave the rest. We'll replace the rest. I don't have any of that here. It's at the apartment. Roman went still. The apartment they photographed you walking home to every night for however long you've lived there. The blood drained from Lena's face. She hadn't thought of it that way. She'd never once thought of her tired walk home through the rain as a route someone could learn. How long, Roman said. How long have you lived at that address? 4 years. He shut his eyes. 4 years. Okay. He opened them again, and the decision was already made. We don't go to the apartment. Whatever's there, it's gone. I'm sorry. Photos of him as a baby, whatever's there, we don't go back for it. Because if the restaurant is watched, then the apartment is watched, and the apartment is exactly where they'll expect a panicking mother to run. His baby pictures are there, Lena said, and her voice cracked in a way it hadn't through any of the rest of it. Roman, his first tooth, the bracelet from the hospital, the only pictures of him from before he could walk. Roman looked at her, and something in his expression came apart because he understood. He understood that she was grieving the loss of the only record of the years he'd missed, the years he'd never get to see now, and that the grief belonged to both of them, and neither of them had time for it. When this is over, Roman said very quietly, I will buy back the whole building if I have to. I will get you every photograph, every tooth, every bracelet. I swear it to you on his life, which is the only thing I have left to swear on. But right now we walk out the back, and we do not stop, and we do not go home. Can you do that? For him? Noah answered before she could. We can do that, her son said. Mom, we can. It's just stuff. Lena looked down at her 6-year-old, who understood somehow more than she did. It's just stuff, she echoed, and she let go. The back door of the restaurant opened onto the alley, and 3 of Roman's men went through it. First spreading out into the rain, and then Roman took Noah's hand and Lena's arm and moved them all fast toward a black car that hadn't been there 20 minutes ago, and now sat with its engine running and its door open. Marcus, Lena said, turning back at the threshold, thank you for everything, for all of it. Don't thank me like it's goodbye. Marcus's eyes were wet. You come back, you hear me? You come back and you tell me the whole story and I'll make you both pancakes. Pancakes, Noah agreed solemnly, and then the rain swallowed them, and the car door closed, and the restaurant with its cracked booths and flickering sign fell away behind them into the dark. The car moved through the wet streets of Chicago, like it knew where every camera was, and Lena would learn later that it did, that the man driving had memorized the surveillance map of the city, the way other men memorized baseball scores. Roman sat beside her with Noah between them, and for a long time, nobody said anything. Then Noah, who had been watching the water run down the window, said, You never answered my question. Roman looked down at him. Which one? If you're a stranger. You said you knew my mom before I was born, but you didn't say if you're a stranger now. The car was very quiet. Lena watched Roman's hands, the way they curled and uncurled on his knees. A man who had faced down killers without blinking, now completely paralyzed by a child's question. I don't think I'm a stranger, Roman said carefully, but I don't think I get to be not a stranger yet. That's something you decide, buddy, not me. You've only known me for about an hour. Strangers stop being strangers when you decide you know them. So I guess it's up to you. Noah thought about this with his whole face. That's a good answer, he decided. Yeah, most grown-ups just say a thing to make you stop asking. You actually answered. Noah went back to the window. My mom does that too. Answers for real. That's how I know she's not lying usually. When people lie, they answer too fast. Lena felt Roman's eyes come up to hers over their son's head, and there was a whole conversation in that look, 7 years of it, and she had to turn and stare out her own window so he wouldn't see her cry again. They drove for almost an hour out past where the city thinned into suburbs, and the suburbs thinned into dark stretches of tree and field. Noah fell asleep somewhere around the 40-minute mark, his head lolling against Roman's arm, and Lena watched Roman freeze, completely terrified to move, terrified to breathe a man holding still so his sleeping son wouldn't wake, and she thought her heart might simply stop. You can put your arm around him, she whispered. He won't wake. He sleeps like the dead. Roman moved so slowly it was almost funny, easing his arm around the small shoulders, drawing the boy in against his side. When it was done, he sat there rigid with the effort of not weeping, and Lena looked away to give him privacy for it. "Tell me what happened," she said, finally, keeping her voice low. 7 years ago. You said you weren't dead, you were taken. Tell me. I've earned the truth, Roman. I've earned it 100 times over. He was quiet for a long moment. You have, he agreed. You've earned all of it. I just have to decide how much of it you can carry. Don't do that. Don't decide what I can carry. I carried your son alone for 6 years, believing you were rotting in a river. There is nothing you can say that's heavier than that. That landed. She watched it land. Okay, Roman said. Okay, 7 years ago I was nobody. You knew me when I was nobody. I ran packages for a man named Aldo Ferro. Small stuff, courier stuff. The kind of thing a broke kid does when he wants to buy a ring. He glanced at her, then away. I was going to buy a ring, Lena. That week. That's what I never got to tell you. I had the money set aside. I was going to do it stupid at that diner on Halsted in front of everybody. Lena pressed her hand to her mouth. But Aldo got greedy. Roman went on, his voice flattening into the tone of a man reciting something he'd relived 10,000 times. He tried to move on a bigger organization, the Serranos, and when it went bad, the Serranos didn't just kill Aldo. They collected everyone who worked for him. Not to kill us, to use us, to flip us. They took me to a house in another state and they kept me there and they told me you were the leverage. They said if I ran, if I tried to reach you, they'd hurt you. So the smartest thing I could do to keep you safe was to let you think I was dead. And I believed them, God help me. I believed that a wall of silence was the wall protecting you. So the men who came to my door were theirs, sent to close the loop, to make sure you grieved and moved on and never came looking. And it worked. It worked so well that they forgot about you, and I let them forget because a forgotten woman is a safe woman. His arm tightened fractionally around his sleeping son. I never once imagined there was more than one of you to forget. Lena stared at him. You gave me up to keep me safe. I gave you up because I was 25 and terrified, and they made me believe it was the only way. His voice broke on the last word, just slightly, just enough. And every year I got more powerful, and every year I told myself I'd earn enough control to come find you and explain. And every year I put it off because I was ashamed of what I'd become to survive. I didn't want you to see the man I turned into. I wanted to stay dead to you because at least dead, I was still the boy who was going to buy a ring. He finally looked at her full on. I never imagined you'd been raising the ring in a stroller this whole time. The car rolled on through the dark. Say something, Roman said. I don't know what to say. I spent 7 years hating you a little underneath the grief, for dying. Isn't that stupid, being angry at a dead man for dying? She laughed, wet and broken. And now you're telling me you chose it. You chose to let me think that. To keep me safe, sure, but you chose it. And I don't know if that makes it better or so much worse. It makes it worse, Roman said. I know it makes it worse. There's no version where I come out of this a good man, Lena. I let you bury me. I've done things since that would turn your stomach. I run a piece of this city that ruins lives. There is no speech I can give you that fixes any of that. He looked down at Noah. The only thing I've got, the only thing is that from this minute forward, I will never lie to you again, and I will burn the world down before I let anyone touch him. That's it. That's all I have to offer. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. Lena wiped her face with the back of her hand. It's not enough, she agreed, but it's not nothing either. They arrived a little after midnight. The house sat at the end of a long, private drive, dark and set back among old trees, the kind of place a person could drive past 1,000 times and never notice. Roman's men went in first, checking the rooms with a practiced efficiency that made Lena's skin crawl, and only when one of them gave a short nod did Roman carry the still sleeping Noah inside, moving with the exaggerated care of a man handling something priceless. There's a room upstairs, he murmured. First on the left. It's warm. I had someone turn the heat on an hour ago. You knew we'd come here. Before I even said yes, you had someone turning on the heat. I hoped, Roman corrected. There's a difference. And if you'd said no, I'd have followed you home anyway and sat in a car outside your building all night, so it wasn't much of a gamble. She should have hated that. Instead, something in her chest loosened just a little at the image of it. Him in a car, guarding a door he'd never been allowed to knock on. They put Noah to bed together. It was the strangest thing, the two of them on either side of the small bed, pulling up blankets, and Roman watched his son sleep with an expression of such naked, wounded wonder that Lena had to look away. "He does this thing," Roman whispered. "When he's really asleep, his breathing, it catches just a little every fourth or fifth breath." "I know, he's always done that." "I missed it." Roman's voice was almost inaudible. "I missed 6 years of that little catch in his breath. I'll never get it back." "No," Lena said, because she'd promised herself she'd stop softening the truth for people who'd lied to her, even this one. "You won't. You missed all of it. His first steps, his first word. The night he had a fever of 104, and I sat in a bathtub full of cold water holding him for 3 hours because I was too scared to sleep. You missed the whole thing, Roman, and I did it alone. And I need you to sit in it before you start acting like a father, because he doesn't need a man who shows up and plays hero. He's had enough drama for one night. He needs someone who's going to actually stay." Roman took it. He didn't flinch, and he didn't defend himself. He just nodded slowly and said, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life sitting in it, however long that is." They went back downstairs. Roman's men had settled into positions throughout the house, at windows, at doors, a quiet architecture of protection, and Roman led her into a kitchen and put a kettle on the stove like an ordinary man in an ordinary house, and for a moment Lena let herself pretend. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen and every ordinary thing drained out of his face. "I have to take this," he said. "Stay here." He didn't stay here. He walked into the next room, but the house was old and the walls were thin, and Lena heard fragments. She heard Roman's voice drop into that clipped cold register. She heard him say a name, Calloway, and she heard him say who, and she heard him say that's not possible, and she heard very clearly, right before the kettle began to scream, 4 words that stopped her heart. "He knows about the boy." Lena took the kettle off the flame with a hand that had gone numb. When Roman came back into the kitchen, his face had changed again, had gone somewhere past cold, into a stillness that frightened her more than any rage could have. "Who's Calloway?" Lena said. "You heard." "Who is he, Roman?" Roman set his phone face down on the counter very deliberately, the way a man sets down a weapon he doesn't trust himself to hold. "Calloway is the man who's been coming for me," he said. "The one who does his homework, the strategist. For a year he's been peeling my organization apart from the inside, turning my people, mapping my weaknesses. I've been trying to figure out how he keeps getting inside information. Tonight I found out." "How?" "Someone close to me is feeding him. Someone who's been at my side for years." Roman's jaw tightened until she could see the muscle jump, "and that someone just told Calloway that I have a son. Which means the phone call I just got, the one where a man I've trusted with my life for 6 years pretended to warn me about a leak, was Calloway's own informant calling to find out how much I know." He looked at her. He was fishing. He wanted to hear my voice when I learned about Noah. He wanted to know if I'd protect the boy. Now he knows I will, which makes Noah the most valuable thing in this entire war. "Isoba kyomo tiuntina." Lena gripped the counter. "You said the man who called is someone close to you, someone you've trusted for years. Who?" Roman didn't answer. "Roman, who called you?" "My second," Roman said quietly. "My right hand. The man who's run my security for 6 years. The man who 20 minutes ago sent 3 cars to this house to guard us through the night." He picked the phone back up and looked at it. 3 cars full of his men, who are right now sitting in the dark all around this house. The floor seemed to tilt under Lena's feet. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that the men out there protecting us might be here to—" "I don't know yet." Roman was already moving, already checking the windows, his whole body coiled. "That's the hell of it. I don't know which of them are loyal and which of them are his. The man who betrayed me picked the guards for tonight. Some of them would die for me. Some of them are waiting for a signal, and I can't tell them apart by looking." "Then we have to get Noah out, right now. Wake him up, we run." "Run where?" Roman turned to face her. On foot in the rain with a 6-year-old with no car that isn't theirs and no phone that isn't tapped into a night full of men who want him alive. He shook his head. No, we don't run into their hands. We think. We're smarter than this, both of us. You kept him hidden for 6 years. I've stayed alive in this world for 7. We do not panic now. But Lena was already halfway to the stairs because she was a mother first and everything else second, and there was no calculation in the world that could keep her from her son when there was a threat in the house. She got 3 steps up when she heard it. A car door, outside, then another, then the low crunch of footsteps on wet gravel, more than one set moving toward the house. Roman went absolutely still at the bottom of the stairs. He held up one hand and she froze, and they both listened. The footsteps stopped at the front door. And then a voice came through the wood, calm and friendly and familiar, a voice Lena had never heard, but that made Roman's face turn to ash. "Roman," the voice called. "It's me, open up. We need to talk about the boy." Roman looked up at her on the stairs, and for the first time all night, Lena saw fear in the eyes of the man who was supposed to be the wall between her son and the dark. "That's him," Roman whispered. "That's my second. He came himself." His hand moved to his waist to something under his jacket she hadn't let herself think about. "Lena, get up the stairs. Get Noah. Go to the last room on the right and lock the door, and do not open it for anyone. Not for his men. Not for mine. Not for anyone but me, and only when I say your name twice. Roman." 2 times, Lena. If someone says my name once, or says your name once, or gives you any signal but my voice saying your name 2 times, you keep that door locked if they burn the house down around you. Do you understand me? She understood him. She understood that the man on the other side of the door had helped them escape. The restaurant had chosen this house, had turned on the heat, and sent the guards, had done every single helpful thing tonight, and had done all of it to walk them gently into a trap. "Go," Roman said. "Now." Lena went. She flew up the stairs on legs that didn't feel like hers, and behind her she heard the front door open, and she heard Roman's voice, calm and cold and terrible, say, "Hello, Vince. You want to explain why you told a man named Calloway about my son before you told me he existed?" And she heard the friendly voice answer without a shred of shame, "Because Calloway pays better than loyalty, Roman, and because you were always going to find out about the kid eventually. I just made sure I was the one holding the boy when you did." Lena reached Noah's door and threw it open, and her son was sitting up in the bed, wide awake, his eyes clear and calm in the dark. "Mom," Noah said before she could say a word. "The man downstairs isn't a friend. His shoes are wet on the top but dry underneath. He was waiting outside a long time before he knocked. Friends don't wait." Lena scooped her son out of the bed and held him so tight he grunted, and she carried him down the hall to the last room on the right, and she locked the door with a click that sounded in the silence as loud as a gunshot. Downstairs, the friendly voice was still talking. Downstairs, Roman was answering, and Lena pressed her back against the locked door with her son in her arms and waited to hear his name. 2 times. She would not open it for one. She would not open it for anything. She held her boy and she stared at the door handle, and she waited, and the whole house had gone silent, and the silence stretched and stretched, and she realized she was no longer hearing voices at all. Then from somewhere below, a single sharp sound cracked through the house, and after it nothing. Noah's arms tightened around her neck. "Mom," he whispered. "Was that him? Was that my dad?" Lena couldn't answer. She was staring at the door, listening with her whole body, waiting to hear a voice on the stairs, waiting to hear it say her name. The footsteps came slow, one at a time, up the stairs, down the hall, toward the last room on the right. They stopped outside the door, and a voice, low and rough and impossible to identify through the heavy wood, said, "Lena." Just once, her whole body went cold. She clamped a hand over Noah's mouth as gently as she could and shook her head at him, and her son understood. Her impossible clever son understood everything, and he went silent as stone in her arms. One time. The voice had said her name one time, and Roman had told her, "Keep that door locked if they burn the house down around you." The handle turned, once, twice, locked, and on the other side of the door the voice waited, and Lena held her breath, and she did not make a sound. And she prayed to that God she'd stopped talking to, prayed the way she hadn't prayed in 7 years, that whoever was standing on the other side of that door was not the last thing her son would ever hear. The handle went still. And then from the far end of the hall, from the top of the stairs, came a second voice, ragged, breathless, in pain, but unmistakable. Lena. A pause. A wet, dragging breath. Lena. 2 times. She was already at the door, already turning the lock, already deciding to believe, because that voice was Roman's and it had said her name twice, and she had to trust the one man in the city she had every reason not to trust. She threw the door open. Roman stood at the end of the hall, one hand pressed to his side, dark wetness spreading between his fingers, and behind him, crumpled at the top of the stairs, lay a shape that did not move. But the man who had stood outside her door, the man who had said her name once, that man was gone. He ran. Roman gasped, staggering toward them, and Lena caught him before he fell, and Noah scrambled off the bed and grabbed a fistful of his father's jacket with both small hands. Vince ran. I hit him, but he ran. He knows we're here now. They all know. His knees buckled, and Lena went down with him, easing him to the floor. And there was so much blood, too much blood, and her hands were slick with it. We have to move, right now. We can't stay. Lena, we have to move. You're shot, she said stupidly. Roman, you're shot, you can't. Later. His hand found Noah's small hand and gripped it. Bleeding's later. The boy is now. He looked up at his son through the pain, and he made himself smile a terrible, bloody, loving smile. Hey, buddy. Remember what I told you at the restaurant? Noah's chin trembled, but his voice held. You said you're not the danger. You said you're the wall. That's right. Roman squeezed his hand. I'm the wall, and walls take a hit sometimes. That's the whole job. But I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I am not going anywhere. And Noah, 6 years old, calm and clever and quietly, ferociously brave, looked at his bleeding father and answered in a voice that broke Lena Carter's heart into 1,000 pieces. Okay, Noah said, but don't you dare disappear again. Don't you dare disappear again. The words hung in the air, and Roman gripped his son's hand tighter, and for 1 second Lena thought he might pass out right there on the floor of a safe house that was no longer safe. I won't, Roman said through his teeth. I promise. But I need you to be brave for a few more minutes, both of you, because we are not done being in trouble yet. How bad is it? Lena said, pulling his jacket open, her hands already moving with the practiced calm of a woman who had spent years being the only adult in every emergency. Roman, how bad? It went through, I think. It hurts like it went through. That's good. Through is good. Through means it's not still in you. She was pressing the heel of her hand against the wound now hard, and he grunted, Noah, baby, I need you to go in that bathroom and bring me every towel you can carry. Can you do that? Noah was gone and back in 10 seconds with an armful of white towels, and Lena packed them against Roman's side and took his own hand and pressed it down over them. Hold this, hard as you can. There are still men outside, Roman said. Vince's men. Some of them are loyal to me, some of them are his, and I still can't tell which is which, and now there's been a gunshot, and every one of them heard it. His breath was coming fast and shallow, which means in about 30 seconds someone is coming through that front door, and I don't know if they're coming to save us or finish us. As if the house itself wanted to prove him right, a voice called up from the bottom of the stairs. A man's voice tense, urgent. Boss, you up there, we heard a shot. Talk to me, boss, are you hit? Roman's whole body went rigid. His good hand moved toward the gun on the floor beside him. That's Danny, he whispered. That's one of mine, I think. I've known Danny 4 years. His jaw clenched. But I knew Vince 6. Lena watched the calculation move across his face, the awful arithmetic of a man who could no longer trust the people sworn to protect him, and she understood in that moment exactly what his life had been for 7 years. Every friendly voice a maybe, every loyal hand a possible knife. Boss, the voice called again, closer now on the stairs. I'm coming up. Don't shoot me. It's Danny. I'm coming up. Slow hands where you can see him. Roman, Lena breathed. What do we do? Roman lifted the gun. His hand was shaking from blood loss, but the barrel steadied when it pointed at the doorway, and Lena pulled Noah behind her, and the 3 of them waited. A man appeared in the doorway with his hands raised, young, maybe 30, his face slick with rain and fear. He took one look at Roman on the floor, at the blood at the towels, and his whole face crumpled with what looked to Lena like genuine anguish. "Oh, no, boss, no." He dropped to his knees. "Who did this? Was it Vince? I saw Vince run out the back like the devil was on him. I knew something was wrong. I told you that man." "Prove it," Roman said. Danny stopped. "What? Prove you're mine and not his." The gun didn't waver. "You've got one sentence to make me believe you, Danny, and if I don't believe you, I put you down because I have a 6-year-old behind me and I'm out of chances to be wrong about people." Danny's throat worked, and then he did the smartest thing he could have done. He didn't beg, he didn't swear, he simply reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out his gun and set it on the floor and slid it across the room until it bumped against Roman's leg. "There," Danny said. "Now I'm the one who can't hurt you. Do whatever you gotta do, boss. But let me help you first, 'cause you're bleeding out on the floor, and that little kid's watching, and no matter which way you decide about me, that kid should not have to watch his old man die." Something changed in Roman's face. He lowered the gun. "Okay," he said. "Okay, Danny, okay. Okay, Danny." What happened next happened fast. Danny got Roman's arm over his shoulder and hauled him up, and Lena carried Noah, and they moved through the dark house toward the garage where a different car waited. A plain car, an anonymous car, and Danny put Roman in the back, and Lena climbed in beside him, and Noah scrambled into her lap, and Danny got behind the wheel. "How many of the men out there are Vince's?" Roman said, his head lolling against the seat. "I don't know, boss. 3 of us came in your cars, 4 came in Vince's. Vince's 4 are gone, they left when he ran. Your 3 were still here. Marco's watching the road, Sal's on the back fence." Danny threw the car into reverse. "But if Vince knows this address, then Calloway knows this address, and Calloway's people move fast. We got minutes. Maybe." The garage door rolled up, and the car shot backward into the rain, and Lena held her son and her son's father, and thought wildly that 12 hours ago her biggest problem had been crispy fries for table 12. "Where?" Danny said. "Boss, where am I driving? Every safe house we got Vince knows about. He set 'em all up." Roman's eyes were closed. For a terrible moment, Lena thought he'd passed out. Then he said without opening them, "Take us to the lake house. The one under Cormac's name." Danny's hands tightened on the wheel. "Boss, Cormac's dead. That property's been empty 2 years. Which is exactly why Vince doesn't know I kept paying the taxes on it." A ghost of a smile crossed Roman's gray face. "I never told anyone I kept it. Not even you. I kept one thing I never told anyone, Danny. Every man in my position should. Turns out I was right." Lena stared at him. Even bleeding, even half-conscious, even in the middle of being betrayed by the man closest to him, Roman had had a card no one knew about, a house no one knew he owned. She thought of what he'd said in the car earlier about a man with nothing to lose, and she understood that he had lived his whole life like this, always holding one thing back, always keeping one door no one else knew existed. "That's how you survived," she said quietly. 7 years, that's how. You never let anyone know everything." Roman opened his eyes and looked at her. "It's a lonely way to stay alive," he said. "I don't recommend it." They drove for 40 minutes with the heater blasting and Roman fading in and out, and Lena kept her hand pressed against his side and kept talking to him, kept his name in his ears, and Noah, her impossible son, held his father's other hand the entire way and did not cry once. It was almost 3 in the morning when they reached the lake house. It was small and cold and smelled of dust and disuse, but it had walls and a locking door, and most importantly, it belonged to a dead man that no living enemy knew Roman still owned. Danny carried Roman inside and laid him on a couch under a sheet of dust, and Lena went to work. She had never dug a bullet out of anyone. But the bullet had gone through, and what she had to do instead was clean it and pack it and stop the bleeding, and that at least was just a bigger version of every scraped knee and split lip she'd handled as a mother. She sent Danny to boil water. She sent Noah to find clean cloth, and she knelt beside the man she'd mourned for 7 years and put her hands inside a wound in his body and kept him alive with nothing but nerve and stubbornness. "You're good at this," Roman said, his voice thin. "You shouldn't be good at this. I raised a boy alone in a rough neighborhood on a waitress's tips. I'm good at a lot of things I shouldn't have to be good at." She tied off the dressing and sat back on her heels, and only then did her hands start to shake. "There. It's not a hospital, but it'll hold until we can get you real help." "We can't get real help. A gunshot wound is a police report. A police report is Calloway finding us in an hour." He caught her wrist gently. "You just did the real help. You. There isn't going to be anything better than what you just did. So thank you." Lena looked down at his hand on her wrist, at the blood drying under her fingernails, and something broke loose in her chest that she'd been holding shut for 7 years. "I dreamed about you," she said. She didn't know why she was saying it. Maybe because it was 3 in the morning and she was covered in his blood and their son was asleep in the next room. "For years. I'd dream you weren't dead. I'd dream you walked back through the door and had some explanation and everything went back to how it was. And I'd wake up and remember, and it was like losing you all over again every single morning for years." Her voice cracked. "And now you're here, and you did walk back through the door, and you do have an explanation, and it doesn't go back to how it was, Roman. It can't. You're not the boy who was going to buy a ring. And I'm not the girl who was waiting for one. We're strangers now, wearing the faces of 2 people who loved each other." Roman was quiet for a long time. "Maybe," he said finally, "but strangers stop being strangers when you decide you know them. A wise man told me that tonight." He smiled faintly. "He's about 3 feet tall and he reads books about octopuses." Despite everything, Lena laughed, and the laugh turned into something that wasn't a laugh, and Roman reached up with his good hand and wiped her face with his thumb, and for one moment, one single suspended moment, it almost was the way it used to be. Then Danny came in from the other room, and his face said the moment was over. "Boss." Danny held up a phone, not his own, a cheap burner. "This was ringing, in the kitchen drawer. Somebody left it here." Roman went still. "Cormac's dead. Nobody's been here in 2 years. Nothing in this house should be ringing." "It rang 3 times, Danny said. Then it stopped. Then this came through." He turned the screen around. Lena leaned in to read it, and her blood turned to ice. It was a text message. It said, "I know you kept the lake house, Roman. I always knew. I let you keep your one secret so you'd have somewhere to run when the time came. Welcome home. Look out the window." For one heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Roman was up off the couch, ignoring the wound, ignoring Lena's cry of protest, and he had Danny's gun in his hand, and he was moving toward the window, and Lena grabbed Noah off the floor where he'd fallen asleep and pressed herself into the corner farthest from the glass. Roman looked out the window, and whatever he saw drained the last of the color from his face. "How many?" Danny whispered. 2 cars, Roman said, at the end of the drive. Lights off, just sitting. He stepped back from the window slowly. "He's not attacking. He's showing me he knows where I am. He's telling me I have nowhere left to run." He turned to face them, and his voice was steady, but Lena could see the effort it cost him. "This is Calloway's whole game. He doesn't want a shootout. He wants me to understand that every wall I have, he's already behind. He's been behind them the whole time. My second, my safe houses, my last secret. He wanted me to run all the way here to the one place I thought was mine, so he could send a text and take even that from me." "Why?" Lena said. "If he can find us anywhere, why not just come in? Why the games?" Roman looked at her, and the answer was so terrible he almost couldn't say it. "Because he doesn't want me dead," Roman said. "He wants me broken. He wants me to hand him the boy. That's the whole point of all of this. He's showing me there's no wall he can't get behind, so that when he finally makes his offer, I'll believe him when he says the only way to keep Noah safe is to give Noah to him." His hand tightened on the gun. "He's not here to kill us tonight. He's here to teach me that I've already lost." The burner phone buzzed again. Roman looked at it, looked at Lena, and then he picked it up and put it on speaker and set it on the dusty table, and a voice filled the little room, smooth and warm and unhurried, the voice of a man who had never once in his life had to raise it. "Roman," Calloway said, "you're a hard man to sit down with. I've been trying for a year." "You've got a strange way of asking for a meeting, Calloway. You put a bullet in me tonight." "Vince put a bullet in you. Vince is a blunt instrument. I'd have preferred you unharmed, but he panicked when you saw through him faster than I expected." A pause. You always were faster than people expected. It's why I respect you. It's why I'd rather have you working with me than dying in a dead man's lake house in front of your son." Roman's eyes flicked to Noah asleep against Lena's shoulder, and Lena saw him decide something. "Leave the boy out of your mouth," Roman said. "I can't do that, Roman. The boy is the entire conversation." Calloway's voice never changed, never hardened, stayed gentle throughout, and that was the most frightening thing about it. "Here's where we are. I own your organization. I've owned it for months. Your men answer to me, they just don't all know it yet. You have no safe houses I can't find, no lieutenants I haven't turned, and no future in this city that doesn't run through me. You've lost Roman. It's already over. And I'm not calling to gloat. I'm calling because I'm a practical man, and a practical man doesn't destroy a valuable thing when he can use it. Get to the point. The point is your son." A pause calculated patient. "A boy like that raised right, taught by the right people, is worth more than any territory. He's your blood, Roman, your intelligence, your instincts. I've seen the reports on him. 6 years old and he clocked my surveillance car through a rainy window. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I don't want to hurt him. God, no. I want to raise him. I want to give him everything you can't. Safety, education, a future that doesn't end in a lake house full of blood." Lena felt the rage build in her before she could stop it. "You will never touch him," she said into the phone before Roman could stop her. There was a pause. "Ah," Calloway said, and something shifted in his voice, a new interest, a new pleasure. "The mother. Lena, isn't it Lena Carter? I've read a great deal about you too. You did an extraordinary job hiding him for 6 years. Truly, I mean that. You're a remarkable woman." His voice dropped intimate poisonous. "Which is why I'm going to make you an offer directly mother to the boy, because Roman here is compromised. He loves you both too much to think clearly. But you, Lena, you've spent 6 years doing whatever it takes to keep that child safe. You're a survivor, so let me talk to the survivor." "Don't listen to him," Roman said. "Lena, here's my offer." Calloway went on smooth as oil. "Help me, just a little. Roman doesn't trust his own people anymore, but he trusts you. He'll tell you things he won't tell them. All you have to do is tell me what he tells you. Keep me informed. Nudge him toward the choices that end this quietly. And in exchange, I will personally guarantee your son's safety. No harm comes to him. Not from me, not from anyone. He grows up, he goes to school, he reads his books about octopuses. All you have to do is help me end Roman's little war before it gets your boy killed. Because make no mistake, Lena, Roman's pride is the only thing standing between your son and safety right now. Roman would rather fight and lose everything than admit he's beaten. Is that the man you want deciding whether Noah lives?" The room was silent. Lena looked at Roman. Roman looked back at her, and he didn't say a word, didn't beg, didn't defend himself. He just looked at her with his blood on her hands and their son asleep on her shoulder, and he let her decide. And that, more than any argument he could have made, told Lena everything. "You're right about one thing," Lena said into the phone. Her voice was very calm. "I've spent 6 years doing whatever it takes to keep my son safe. I've lied, I've run, I've disappeared, I've given up everything I ever owned, so believe me when I tell you I know exactly what a man sounds like when he wants to use my child, because I've spent 6 years listening for that sound in the dark." She leaned closer to the phone. "And you sound exactly like it." Roman walked into my restaurant, and the first thing he did was put himself between my son and the window. "The first thing you did was ask me to betray the one man in the world who'd die for him. So here's my answer, Mr. Calloway. Here's what the survivor says. No, not now, not ever. Not if you find us in every house in this state. My son already has a father who won't disappear. He doesn't need a monster who wants to raise him." She hung up the phone. The silence afterward was enormous. Roman was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Danny had frozen by the window, and in her arms, Noah stirred and murmured, half asleep, "Mom, who were you yelling at?" "Nobody, baby," she whispered, pressing her lips to his hair. "Just a bad man on the phone. Go back to sleep." "Okay," he nestled in, then drowsily, "Dad's still here, right? The word landed in the room like a dropped glass. Dad. He'd said it. Not the man, not the friend from the drawing. Dad. Lena looked at Roman, and Roman looked like he'd been shot a second time in a place no bullet could reach. Yeah, buddy. Roman managed his voice thick. Dad's still here. Good. Noah sighed and was gone again into sleep. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Roman lowered himself back onto the couch slowly, his hand pressed to his side, and he looked up at Lena with an expression she hadn't seen on his face in 7 years. You just turned down the only offer of safety anyone's made you tonight, he said quietly. He might have meant it. He might have actually kept Noah safe. No, he wouldn't have. Lena sat down beside him, still holding their son. A man who wants to raise your child instead of his own is a man who thinks children are property. He'd have kept Noah alive, sure. As a thing. As a weapon he was building. And someday my son would have figured out exactly what he was to that man, the same way he figures out everything, and it would have destroyed him. She shook her head. I didn't spend 6 years keeping his heart whole just to hand it to someone who'd hollow it out. Roman closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. I don't deserve you, he said. I don't deserve either of you. I let you bury me. I built an empire full of men who'd sell you to the highest bidder. I brought all of this to your door, and you're still sitting here covered in my blood, choosing me over a man who could actually protect you. I'm not choosing you, Lena said, and it wasn't cruel, it was just true. Not yet, maybe not ever, I don't know. Too much broke to just glue it back, but I'm choosing him. She looked down at Noah. And right now, choosing him means choosing the man who put himself between my boy and the window. That's not the same as forgiving you, Roman. Don't confuse the two. I won't, Roman said. I'd never dare. Danny cleared his throat from the window. Boss, the car's at the end of the drive. They're leaving. Roman's head came up. Both of them. Both. Just pulled out. Gone. Danny turned around, his face uneasy. Why would they leave? They had us. Dead to rights. Why show up, send the texts, make the call, and then just drive off? And Roman, who understood men like Calloway, because he'd had to become one to survive, felt the answer settle into his bones like cold water. Because he got what he came for, Roman said slowly. He never came here to take us tonight. He came to make the offer, and now he has his answer. He looked at Lena. You told him no. You told him in no uncertain terms that neither of us will ever hand over the boy. So now he knows there's no clean way to get Noah. No deal. No betrayal from the inside of this room. His jaw tightened. Which means the only way left is the loud way, the way he was hoping to avoid. He gave us the whole night to choose the easy path, and we didn't take it. So now it's the hard path for all of us. What's the hard path? Lena whispered, though she already knew. Roman looked at his sleeping son, and then at the woman he'd loved and lost and found again, and his face set into something she'd remember for the rest of her life. War, he said, the real kind. No more games, no more offers, no more texts in the dark. He'll come with everything he has, and he'll come soon, because now he knows I'll never stop, and neither will you. He pushed himself upright, one hand on his wound, and there was something almost like relief in his eyes, the relief of a man who has finally been given a problem he knows how to solve. So I'm done running. I'm done hiding in dead men's houses. If he wants a war, I'm going to give him one, on my terms in a place I choose, and I'm going to end it. All of it. Vince, Calloway, every man of theirs. I'm going to end it so completely that no one ever looks at my son as leverage again. Danny took a slow breath. Boss, you're shot. You can barely stand. Half your men are Vince's. You want to start a war tonight? Not tonight. Roman looked at Lena. First, I get them somewhere Calloway truly can't reach. Not a safe house, not a secret, somewhere off the whole board. And there's only one place like that left, and I've never told a living soul it exists, because I made it for exactly this. He drew a breath. For the day I finally had something worth protecting more than my own life. Lena stared at him. You have another secret, a last one, deeper than the lake house. I have one last door, Roman said, that nobody knows about. Not Vince, not Danny, not Calloway. Only me. He held her gaze. And I'm about to trust you with it, because you're the only person alive I'd rather protect than protect myself. The burner phone on the table buzzed one final time. Everyone froze. Roman picked it up, read it, and his whole body went rigid in a way it hadn't all night, worse than the gunshot, worse than the cars in the drive. And Lena felt her heart stop at the look on his face. "What?" she said. "Roman, what does it say?" Roman turned the phone around so she could read it. The message said, "You have one last door too, Roman, the one you never told anyone about, the one you built for the day you had something worth protecting. I know about that one too. I've always known about that one. It's where I'll be waiting." "It's where I'll be waiting." Roman read the message a second time, and Lena watched something happen to him that she'd never seen before. He didn't panic. He didn't rage. He went perfectly terribly still the way a man goes still when the last piece of a puzzle drops into place and the picture it makes is worse than anything he imagined. "That's impossible," Danny said, reading over his shoulder. "Boss, if he knows about your last door, then he knows everything. There's nothing left. There's nowhere." "No," Roman said slowly. "That's the point. That's exactly the point." He set the phone down with a hand that was steadier than it had any right to be. "He doesn't know about the last door. Boss, it's right there in the message. He knows I have one. He's guessing. He's fishing again, same as Vince did on the phone at the safe house." Roman looked up, and there was a cold clarity in his eyes now, the fever of blood loss burned away by pure focus. "Think about it, Danny. If he actually knew where it was, he'd already be there. He wouldn't warn me. He'd wait for me to walk in and take us all at once. The whole reason his game works is that he never shows his hand until it's too late to run." He tapped the phone. "This is him showing his hand, which means it isn't a real hand. He's bluffing. He wants me so scared that I never go to the one place he can't find, because if I never go there, then he wins. He's trying to talk me out of the only move he can't counter." Lena stared at him. "How do you know that's not exactly what he wants you to think? How do you know he's not counting on you outsmarting yourself?" Roman held her gaze for a long moment. "I don't," he admitted. "That's the hell of playing against a man like Calloway. Every thought you have he might have planted. Every clever conclusion might be the one he wanted you to reach." He pushed himself up off the couch, gritting his teeth. "So I stopped playing his game. I stopped trying to outthink him. I do the one thing a man who's inside your head can't predict. I do the thing that makes no sense. I go to the door anyway." "Roman, he built this whole war on knowing what I'll do before I do it. Vince fed him my patterns for 6 years, so I break the pattern. The old Roman protects himself, first always keeps one secret, never trusts anyone with the last door." He looked at Lena and then at Noah, still asleep against her shoulder. "But I'm not that man anymore. That man had nothing to lose. This man does. And a man with something to lose does things the strategist can't calculate, because the strategist has never had something worth dying for. That's his blind spot. That's the only one he's got. He can predict a boss. He can't predict a father." Something in Lena's chest tightened at that. She looked at him, this man she'd buried and mourned and hated and found again, and for the first time she saw not the Mafia boss and not the ghost, but something in between, something becoming. A man rebuilding himself in real time around a 6-year-old boy. "Where's the door?" she said. "The last one. Tell me where we're actually going." Roman was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Wisconsin. A cabin. Deep in off any road that has a name. I bought it under the name of a man who died in another country 40 years ago. A name that exists on exactly one piece of paper in exactly one filing cabinet. And I paid cash, and I've never driven there the same way twice, and I've never told a single living soul it exists." He looked at Danny. "Not even you. I'm sorry, Danny. It was never about trusting you. It was about the fact that no man can betray a secret he doesn't have." Danny nodded slowly. "That's why you're still alive, boss. I get it. No hard feelings. There won't be phones there. No burner in a drawer, because no one's ever been in that drawer but me. If Calloway's people are there, it's because they physically followed us tonight, and if we lose them on the road, we're clean. Genuinely clean. For the first time all night." Roman took a breath. but that means we have to lose them completely. And it means one more thing, and Danny, you're not gonna like it. You want to split up? Danny said. Roman blinked. How'd you know? Because I'd do the same. 2 cars, one's a decoy, one carries the family. Danny straightened his shoulders. I'll take the decoy. I'll make it loud, make it obvious. Drive it like I'm running scared toward the city. Draw whoever's still watching. You take the quiet car and disappear north. Danny? Roman looked at him. If they follow the decoy and figure out the family's not in it, they'll do things to the man driving it to find out where the family went. Yeah, Danny said simply. I know. He picked his gun up off the floor where it had sat since he'd surrendered it hours ago. Boss, 6 years ago, you pulled me out of a situation that should have killed me. You never once asked me to pay it back. So let me pay it back now on a night when it actually matters. He looked at Noah. That kid didn't ask to be born into any of this. Least I can do is buy him a head start. The room was silent. Lena felt her throat close. Danny, she said, you don't even know us. I know he put himself between your boy and a window, Danny said. First thing he did. I was there. I saw it. He shrugged an easy motion that didn't match the weight of what he was volunteering for. A man does that the people he's protecting are worth protecting. That's all the knowing I need. Roman crossed the room and gripped Danny's shoulder, and the 2 men looked at each other, and no more words passed between them because none were needed. Then Roman said roughly, You don't die tonight. That's an order. You lead them a merry chase, and you ditch the car, and you walk away, and you disappear. And in 6 months when this is over, I find you and I make you rich. You hear me? You don't get to be a hero. You get to be alive and annoying and expensive. That's the deal. Danny grinned, and for a second he looked very young. Rich and annoying. I can do rich and annoying. They left the lake house in the last dark hour before dawn. Danny took the loud car and roared off toward the highway, toward the city, toward the watching eyes, and Roman took the quiet car and drove it slow and dark down back roads with the headlights off until they were far enough that he dared turn them on. Lena sat in the back with Noah's head in her lap, and for a long time the only sound was the tires on wet road and Roman's breathing, which was too shallow, too fast. You're bleeding again, she said quietly. I can see it on the seat. It'll hold. It won't hold to Wisconsin. Roman, that's ours. Then it'll hold as long as it holds, and I'll drive as far as it lets me. His voice was thin, but stubborn. There's a man in Milwaukee, a vet. Not a doctor, an actual veterinarian, but he does off-the-books work for people like me. No questions, no reports. If I can get to him, he'll patch me right. We stop there, then we go to the cabin. It's on the way north, more or less. More or less. Everything's more or less tonight. Noah stirred in her lap. Are we still driving? Yeah, baby. Go back to sleep. I keep having a dream, Noah mumbled, not really awake. That Dad drives us somewhere with a lot of trees, and there's a lake but a small one, and it's really quiet, and nobody bad can find us there. He yawned. It's a nice dream. The car swerved slightly. Lena looked up and saw Roman's hands white on the wheel, saw his eyes find hers in the mirror wide and stricken. There's a lake, Roman said very quietly. At the cabin. A small one, behind the trees. His voice shook. I never told anyone. Lena, I never told anyone about the lake. Lena looked down at her son drifting back into sleep, and a chill went through her that had nothing to do with the cold. He does that, she whispered. I told you, he sees things. He knows things he shouldn't be able to know. I stopped questioning it years ago. She stroked his hair. The doctors said he was just extremely perceptive, that he reads tiny cues and fills in the rest, that there's nothing spooky about it, it just looks spooky. She swallowed. But sometimes, Roman, sometimes it's the lake behind the trees at a cabin you've never told a soul about. Roman drove in silence for a long moment. Whatever he is, Roman said finally, whatever's going on in that head of his, Calloway sees it too. That's what he meant on the phone. A boy like that raised right is worth more than any territory. He's not wrong that Noah's rare. He's just wrong about what to do with it. His jaw tightened. You raise a boy like that with love, you get a good man who sees people clearly. You raise him like Calloway wants to, you get a weapon that never misses. That's the whole war, Lena, right there. That's what we're actually fighting over. Not territory, not money. What kind of man our son becomes. They reached Milwaukee as the sky was going gray. The vet's name was Petrov, an old man with steady hands and a basement that was cleaner than most hospitals, and he took one look at Roman and cursed in a language Lena didn't know and got to work. Lena took Noah into the next room while Petrov did what he did, and she held her son and covered his ears when Roman made sounds, and when it was over, Roman came out pale and stitched and stronger. The bleeding finally truly stopped. "You should rest a day," Petrov told him, cleaning his instruments. "You will not rest a day." "No," Roman agreed. "I won't." "Then take these, and don't die on the road, it makes paperwork." Petrov pressed a bottle of pills into his hand. Then the old man crouched down slowly in front of Noah and studied the boy with sharp gray eyes. "This is the son." "Yeah," Roman said. Petrov looked at Noah for a long time. Then he looked up at Roman and something passed over his weathered face, something like sorrow. "I have patched you for many years, Roman Vance," Petrov said, "since before you were a boss, and in all those years you were a man who had already decided he was going to die young and alone and made his peace with it. I could see it in you. It made you fearless. It made you very good at this life." He stood, his knees cracking. "But that man is gone. I see it. You have a reason to live now, and a reason to live makes a careful man. And a careful man in your world is a slow man, and a slow man is a dead man." He put a hand on Roman's arm. "So whatever you are driving toward, my friend, you finish it fast, before the wanting to live gets you killed. You understand what I'm telling you. Your love is now your greatest weakness. Do not let it become your last one." Roman looked at his son. "I understand." "No," Petrov said sadly. "You don't, but you will." They drove north into the trees. The cabin was exactly as Noah had dreamed it, and Lena stopped being able to explain that to herself somewhere around the moment they came over the last rise, and she saw the small lake behind the pines, gray and still in the early light, exactly the way a 6-year-old who had never left Chicago had described it in his sleep. She stopped trying to understand her son a long time ago. She just held him a little tighter. Inside it was clean and spare and stocked a place a man had prepared with great care for a day he hoped would never come. There was food. There were blankets. There was Lena noticed a locked cabinet that Roman didn't open in front of them, and she didn't ask what was in it, because she already knew. "Nobody knows this place," Roman said, walking the small rooms, checking the windows, checking the doors, the eternal ritual of a man who could never fully stop. "We're clean. For the first time since the restaurant, we're actually clean." Calloway's message was a bluff. He doesn't know where we are. Right now, this minute, we are 3 people in the woods that no one in the world can find. Lena sank into a chair. The exhaustion hit her all at once, the whole endless night crashing down the restaurant and the escape and the blood and the phone call and the choice she'd made and the man who'd offered to die so they could run. She started to cry finally quietly, the way you cry when you've been holding it for 12 hours. Roman crossed the room and crouched in front of her, and hesitantly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed, put his hand over hers. "You did it," he said quietly. "You got him here. He's safe. Right now in this room, he's safe. You did that." "We did that," Lena said. She turned her hand over under his, and their fingers laced together the first time in 7 years. And it wasn't a decision, and it wasn't forgiveness. It was just 2 exhausted people who had carried a child through fire and come out the other side. "God help me, Roman, we did that." Noah, meanwhile, had found a window that looked out on the lake, and he stood at it with his hands pressed to the glass, watching the water calm as always. "It's just like my dream," he said. "Except in my dream there was a 4th person." Both of them went still. "What?" Lena said. "In the dream, there were 4 of us at the cabin." Noah didn't turn around. He kept looking at the lake. "You and me and Dad, and a man with a nice voice who came later. He said he wanted to help. He had gray hair like the animal doctor, but younger." He tilted his head. "In the dream, he was already here when we got here. He was waiting inside, but he's not, so I guess it was just a dream." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Roman was on his feet before Lena could speak, his gun in his hand, moving toward his son, and the window in the same motion, putting his body between the boy and the glass exactly as he had done at the restaurant 12 hours before. "Noah," Roman said very quietly, very calmly, the calm of a man drowning his own terror so his son wouldn't catch it. "The man with the nice voice, in your dream, was he inside the cabin or outside?" "Inside," Noah said, "by the fireplace. He was sitting in the good chair." Slowly, every one of them, even Noah, now turned to look at the far corner of the room where a single armchair sat facing the cold fireplace, its back to them. And a voice came from it, smooth and warm and unhurried, a voice Lena had heard only once before on a burner phone in a dead man's lake house. "You know," Calloway said without getting up, without turning around, "in 20 years of this work, I have never once been beaten to a location by a 6-year-old's dream. Your son is going to be extraordinary, Roman. I told you. I told you he was worth more than everything you've ever built." Roman had the gun up and aimed at the back of the chair, and his hand was not shaking anymore, and his voice, when it came out, was the voice of a man who had already accepted that he might die in the next 10 seconds, and had decided he was fine with it, as long as the right people lived. "Get away from the fireplace," Roman said. "Slow, hands where I can see them, and know that if you so much as look at my son wrong, I will put you in the ground before your body knows it's dead. Roman." Calloway rose from the chair, slowly, hands open and empty, and turned to face them, and he was exactly as Noah had described him, gray at the temples, but younger than Petrov, with a face so pleasant and ordinary that it made everything he'd done more monstrous, not less. "You still think this is the kind of situation you can shoot your way out of?" He smiled. "I came alone. Look, no men, no guns, just me in a chair in a cabin that supposedly no one on Earth could find." He spread his hands wider. "So ask yourself the only question that matters right now. If I found this place, the one place you never told a living soul about, the one door you built for the end of the world, if I'm sitting in your last chair by your cold fireplace waiting for you," he let it hang, "then how did I find it, Roman, who told me? Because you never told anyone. You said so yourself an hour ago in the car." Yeah. Lena felt the floor drop out from under her, because Roman had said it in the car. To her. Only to her. He'd said Wisconsin, he'd said the cabin, he'd said the lake, and the only people in that car had been Roman and Noah asleep in her lap and herself. And Danny, driving the decoy, hadn't known where it was. Roman had made sure of that. No man can betray a secret he doesn't have. So there was no one. No one who could have told Calloway. No leak, no traitor, no informant. Just 3 people in a car and a man's oldest secret, and somehow impossibly Calloway had arrived first. "You're wondering how," Calloway said, watching her face, reading it the way her own son read faces. "You're doing the math. Roman told you in the car, only you. So it must be you, Lena. That's what Roman's about to start wondering if he hasn't already. He's going to look at you, the woman who hid his son for 6 years, the woman who took a phone call from me tonight, and he's going to wonder if maybe, just maybe, you made a deal after all." "Don't," Lena said. "Don't you do that. Don't you turn him against me. I know you never," Calloway said gently. "I know exactly how I found this place, and it wasn't you. But watch how easy it was. Watch how one sentence put a crack between the two of you. That's all I do, Roman. That's my whole art. I don't need armies. I just need to find the one thing 2 people can't quite trust about each other, and I press on it, and I wait." He looked between them. "You 2 have been apart for 7 years. You barely know each other anymore. You said so yourself, Lena. Strangers wearing the faces of people who loved each other. How much weight do you really think that trust can hold?" Roman didn't lower the gun, but Lena saw the question flicker across his face just for an instant, the terrible instant Calloway had been fishing for, and she felt her heart break all over again, because it was working. The poison was working. And then Noah spoke. "He came in through the lake," Noah said. Everyone turned to look at him. Noah was still at the window, still calm, pointing now at the gray water. "There's a little boat pulled up on the other side. You can see the drag marks in the mud, and his shoes are wet up to here." He pointed at his own shin. The animal doctor's shoes were dry underneath and wet on top. That's how I knew he waited outside. But this man's shoes are wet all the way up high because he walked through the shallow part of the lake to get to the back door where there's no lock. Because the back door faces the water and you thought nobody would ever come from the water. Noah looked at his father, matter of fact, explaining it the way he'd explained the octopus. Nobody told him where the cabin was, Dad. He didn't follow us, and Mom didn't tell him. He's been looking for it for a long time from the water side, checking every cabin on every small lake, because he figured out you'd build your last door somewhere you could watch the water. He found it a while ago. He's been waiting here for days. That's why there's food missing from the cabinet, and you didn't notice yet. The boy shrugged. He wants you to think Mom told him because that hurts more than the truth. The truth is boring. He just looked really hard for a really long time and got lucky. Call. The silence in the cabin was absolute. Calloway stared at the boy, and for the first time all night, the pleasant smile slipped, and underneath it was something Lena hadn't seen on his face before. Not anger, not fear, wonder, and underneath the wonder, hunger. My God, Calloway breathed. He solved it in 10 seconds. He watched me try to break his parents apart, and he took it apart like a puzzle box. Do you see? Do you finally see what he is? He turned to Roman, and his voice was almost pleading now, the voice of a collector who has found the one piece he'd searched his whole life for. Roman, you cannot waste this in a cabin in the woods. He needs to be developed, trained, given everything. I'm not your enemy. I'm the only man alive who understands what your son is capable of becoming. Mom, Noah said quietly, not looking away from Calloway. I don't like how he's looking at me. And that was the thing that ended it. Because Roman had spent the whole night being told he'd already lost, that Calloway was behind every wall, that there was no move left. And none of it had moved him the way those 7 words did. I don't like how he's looking at me. Roman crossed the room in 3 strides, and he didn't shoot because his son was watching. And there are things a father won't do in front of his son. But he took Calloway by the collar and put him against the wall hard enough to shake dust from the rafters, and he pressed the gun up under the man's chin, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet it was barely a breath. You looked at my son, Roman said, like he was a thing you wanted to own. I've heard that sound before. I heard it 7 years ago from the men who owned me, who took me from her, who told me she was leverage. His hand tightened. You want to know the difference between you and me, Calloway. You look at that boy and you see what he could be worth. I look at him and I see the only thing I've ever done that was worth anything at all. You want to develop him. I just want him to fold terrible paper swans and read about octopuses and grow up soft, because soft means he lived somewhere safe enough to stay soft. His finger tightened on the trigger. And you will never ever get to touch that. You won't shoot me, Calloway said, but his voice had lost its smoothness. Not in front of the boy. You just said it yourself. There are things a father won't do in front of his son. You're right, Roman said. There are. He looked over his shoulder. Lena, take Noah outside. Down to the boat. Now. Lena scooped up her son. Noah didn't struggle, but he looked back over her shoulder as she carried him toward the front door, and he looked at Calloway with those clear, calm, terrible eyes, and he said, You should have stayed away from us. And then Lena had him out the door into the cold morning, running toward the water, and behind her, muffled by the log walls, she heard Roman's voice, low and final, saying something she couldn't make out. She didn't hear a gunshot. She almost wished she had, because the silence was worse. She got Noah to the little boat on the far shore, and she turned him away from the cabin and held his face against her shoulder and waited, counting his heartbeats, counting her own, watching the cabin door, waiting for it to open, waiting to see who came out. The door opened, and a figure stepped out into the gray morning light, and Lena's whole body seized, because for one endless second she couldn't tell the light was behind him. She couldn't see his face. She couldn't tell if it was Roman or Calloway, if the man walking toward her across the muddy shore was the father of her child, or the monster who wanted to take him. Then Noah lifted his head, looked across the water, and said the only thing that mattered. It's Dad, her son said. He's walking like his side hurts. It's Dad. and Lena's legs finally gave out, and she sat down hard in the cold mud with her son in her arms and watched Roman Vance walk out of that cabin alive, and she understood watching him come that whatever had happened inside the war was not over. Calloway had men. Calloway had her whole city. One dawn in one cabin didn't end a war, but her son was safe, and his father was walking toward them across the water's edge, one hand pressed to his wounded side, alive, coming back exactly like he'd promised. For now, that was enough. For now, that was everything. "It's Dad. He's walking like his side hurts. It's Dad." Roman reached them and dropped to his knees in the mud, and for a moment none of them said anything. He just pulled them both and his son and the woman he'd never stopped loving, and held on like the whole world was trying to pull them away. "Calloway," Lena said into his shoulder. "Is he—" "He's tied to a chair in there, and he's very much alive," Roman said. "I didn't kill him, not because I didn't want to, because a dead Calloway is a martyr, and his people scatter and regroup and come back angrier. A living Calloway, one I can make talk, is the thread I pull to unravel the whole thing." Vince, the men he turned, all of it. He pulled back and looked at Lena, and there was something new in his face, a decision. "But I can't do it the way I've done everything else. Alone, in the dark, keeping secrets. That's how he got so far inside me in the first place. A man with no one to trust is a man who can be turned one thread at a time." "Then what do you do?" Lena said. Roman was quiet for a moment, holding his son. "Something I should have done 7 years ago," he said. "I stopped being a boss." The next 3 days at the cabin were the strangest of Lena's life. Roman had Calloway in the back room, and he talked to him for hours at a time, and Lena didn't ask what was said, and Roman didn't tell her. But each time he came out, he had a name, and each name he wrote down, and slowly a map appeared on the cabin table, a map of everyone. Calloway had turned everyone Vince, had corrupted every rotten place in the organization Roman had spent 7 years building. "There are more good ones than I thought," Roman said on the second night, staring at the map. "That's what Calloway never understood. He thought loyalty was just a price nobody'd met yet. But look, Danny surrendered his gun to a bleeding man to prove himself. Petrov patched me and warned me to protect you. There are men in here who'd never sell you no matter what he offered." He tapped the map. Calloway found the weak threads, but he never counted the strong ones. He couldn't. He didn't have any of his own. On the third day, Danny called. He was alive. He'd ditched the decoy car outside the city, walked 12 miles and gone to ground exactly as Roman had ordered. And he had news, and the news changed everything. "Vince surfaced, boss." Danny's voice crackled over the burner. "He's telling everyone you're dead. Says Calloway got you at some lake house. He's trying to take the whole organization while the body's still warm, except there's no body, and half the men don't believe him." A pause. "Boss, they're waiting. The good ones. They're waiting to see if you're really gone. If you walked back into the city right now, alive, standing up, I think most of them would come home." Roman closed his eyes. "And if I'm wrong," he said, "if I walk in and they've all been turned, I walk into a room full of men who put me in the ground for good." "Yeah," Danny said. "That's the risk." Roman looked across the cabin at Lena, who was reading to Noah on the couch, the boy's head on her arm, and Lena looked back at him, and she knew what he was asking without him saying it. "Go," she said quietly. "Finish it. We'll be here. We'll be safe. You made this place so no one could find us, and no one has except a man who's now tied to a chair in your back room." She held his gaze. "Go end it, Roman. All of it. Come back when there's nothing left to come back from." "You're sure?" "No," Lena said. "I'm terrified. But I spent 7 years believing you were dead because you tried to protect me by disappearing into silence. I'm not doing that again. This time, you tell me the plan, and you go do it, and you come back, and we don't pretend the dangerous thing isn't happening. That's the deal. No more silence. Ever." Roman crossed to her, and for the first time since the restaurant, he kissed her. It was not the kiss of two strangers. It was not even the kiss of two people who used to love each other. It was the kiss of two people deciding right now in a cabin in the woods with their son between them to start becoming something new. Then he knelt in front of Noah. "Buddy," he said, "I have to go do something dangerous. In the city." Noah looked at him with those clear eyes. The bad men. The bad men. Are you going to win? Roman didn't lie to him. He'd promised he'd never lie to either of them again. I don't know, he said. I think so, but I don't know. That's the truth. Noah nodded slowly, absorbing it the way he absorbed everything, the octopus and the wet shoes and the lie about who told Calloway the location. Then he reached out and put his small hand flat against the scar on Roman's jaw. You said you're the wall, Noah said. Walls don't leave. No, Roman said, his voice thick. They don't, and I'm coming back, but I need you to do the hardest thing, buddy. Harder than being brave. I need you to wait. Waiting is the worst one, but it's the one I need. Noah thought about it. Okay, he said finally. But come back. You said it in the safe house and then you got shot. So this time you have to actually do it. Come back. Roman pressed his forehead to his son's forehead for one long moment. I'm not leaving again, he said. I promise you, I'm not leaving again. And Noah, 6 years old, calm and clever and quietly ferociously brave, answered in the same voice he'd used on a bloody floor in a dead man's safe house. Okay, Noah said, but come back. Roman went back into the fire. He took Calloway with him, bound in the back of the car, and he took the map with all the names, and he took the burner with Danny's number, and he drove south into the city he'd ruled and lost alone wounded, with nothing but a strategist tied up in his trunk and a promise to a 6-year-old boy pulling him forward. Lena and Noah stayed at the cabin, and this time she did the impossible thing, the thing she'd never once managed in 7 years of grief. She waited without preparing for the worst. She read to her son. She taught him to skip stones on the small gray lake. She let herself believe a little more each day that the man who'd walked out of that cabin alive would walk back in. What happened in the city she learned later in pieces over months. Roman didn't storm anything. He didn't shoot his way through anyone. He did the thing Calloway never could have predicted because Calloway understood force and leverage and fear and had never once understood the thing that actually held people together. Roman walked into a warehouse on the south side alone, unarmed, in front of 40 of his own men, half of whom might have been turned, and he stood in the light where they could all see he was alive, and he told them the truth. He told them Vince had betrayed them all. He told them Calloway had been buying them one at a time, and he named the ones who'd been bought out loud to their faces. And he told those men he understood why they'd done it, and he wasn't going to kill them for it. He told them he'd been the wrong kind of boss, a boss who kept secrets and trusted no one, and made every man in the room feel like leverage instead of family. And that was the crack Calloway had walked through. He told them he had Calloway. He told them he had Vince's name and Vince's crimes. And then he told them the thing that ended it. The thing no boss in that world had ever said out loud. The thing that made the loyal men weep and the turned men fall to their knees. He told them he had a son. He told them he'd found out 3 days ago that he had a 6-year-old boy and that everything he'd built, all of it, the whole empire, meant nothing next to that child, and that from this day forward he was not running a criminal organization for money or power or territory. He was going to dismantle it, carefully, legally where he could. He was going to get every man in that room who wanted out with enough money to build a real life, because he was done. He was finished. He had something worth living for now, and he was not going to spend one more day of it in the dark. And Vince, who had been sure the men were his, who had been telling everyone Roman was dead, walked into that warehouse to claim his throne and found 40 men standing behind a living Roman Vance instead. That was the last mistake Vince Corelli ever made. Lena never asked exactly what happened to Vince. Some things a woman doesn't need to carry. But Calloway lived because a living Calloway was a thread, and Roman pulled it, and the whole rival organization came apart in Roman's hands over the following weeks, quietly, thoroughly, the way a patient man takes apart something a patient man built. Calloway had spent a year mapping Roman's weaknesses. Roman spent a month mapping Calloway's, and Roman had 2 advantages Calloway never had. He had loyal men, and he had a 6-year-old who'd taught him that the whole point of winning was having something to protect. Roman came back to the cabin 2 weeks after he left. Lena saw the car come over the rise, and she came out onto the porch with her heart in her throat, because a car coming over that rise could have been anyone, could have been the thing she'd feared for 7 years finally arriving. Then the door opened, and it was him walking a little slower than before, his side still healing, and Noah was off the porch and running before Lena could say a word. And Roman caught his son and lifted him up despite the wound and held him against his chest, and over the boy's shoulder his eyes found Lena's. "It's done," Roman said. "It's over. Not perfect, not clean, but over. No one is coming for him. Not Calloway, not Vince, not anyone. I made sure. I made very sure." His voice broke. "I came back, Lena. I told him I'd come back, and I came back." And Noah, still in his father's arms, pulled back to look at his face, and he studied him the way he studied everything, and then he said, "You look tired, but you look like you told the truth. Your face isn't doing the too fast thing." Roman laughed wet and broken. "No," he said, "no more too fast. Never again." They didn't go back to Chicago. Not to the old life. There was nothing to go back to, and everything Lena had feared about that world had proven true. And even a Roman Vance who was dismantling his empire was a Roman Vance whose name meant something to the wrong people. So they went somewhere new, somewhere quiet, a town Lena had never heard of, where Roman was just a man named Roman who'd retired from a business he didn't talk about. And Lena was a woman who'd finally stopped waiting to be found. And Noah was a strange, brilliant boy who read books about deep-sea creatures and folded terrible paper swans, and slowly over months stopped watching every door for the bad men. It wasn't easy. Some nights Roman woke up reaching for a gun that wasn't there. Some nights Lena woke up certain the phone was about to ring with news of a body in a river. 7 years of grief and a lifetime of violence don't wash off in a few good months. They went to see people who helped with that quietly, a family with a past they only told in pieces. And they were not at first in love. Lena had meant what she said in the lake house. Too much had broken to just glue back. The boy who was going to buy a ring and the girl who was going to wear it were gone. And you can't resurrect people who've turned into someone else. But strangers stop being strangers when you decide you know them, a wise man had said 3 feet tall reading about octopuses. And day by day, Roman and Lena decided to know each other. The new versions, the scarred ones. The ones who'd carried a child through fire and come out the other side holding hands. One evening, almost a year after a rainy Tuesday night in a Chicago restaurant, Lena stood in the kitchen of their small new house and watched Roman teach Noah to skip stones on a pond behind the trees, and she thought about the woman she'd been. The waitress wiping down table 9 for the 4th time, the mother folding tips into an envelope, the widow who wasn't a widow, mourning a man who wasn't dead, protecting a secret so completely that the secret had almost gotten them all killed. She thought about how she told Roman in the lake house that she wasn't choosing him, only Noah, and how that had been true then. It wasn't true anymore. Noah came running in wet to the knees, triumphant. "Mom, I got it to skip 4 times. Dad says his record is 7, but I don't believe him because he always rounds up." "I do not round up," Roman said, coming in behind him, and he was smiling an easy smile, a smile with no calculation behind it, a smile Lena hadn't seen on his face since before the world took him 7 years ago. "Tell her I don't round up." "He rounds up," Noah stage whispered. Lena looked at the two of them, her son and his father dripping pond water on her clean floor, and she felt something settle in her chest that had been unsettled for 7 years. Not the absence of fear. Fear like theirs never fully leaves, but something stronger than fear. The thing that had made Roman walk into that cabin instead of running. The thing that had made him unpredictable to a man who could predict anything. The thing worth protecting. "Noah," she said, "go get changed. You're soaked." He ran off, and it was just the two of them, and Roman crossed the kitchen and stood beside her at the window watching the last light on the water. "You saved us," Lena said quietly. "All those years I thought I was the one keeping him safe. And I was. But that night in the restaurant when you walked in, and the first thing you did before you even knew he was yours, was put yourself between him and the window." She turned to look at him. "That's when I knew. Not that I could love you again, I didn't know that yet, but that you were the wall, just like you told him, and I'd spent 6 years being the only wall he had." Roman looked down at her. "Do you know it now? Know what? Whether you can love me again?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the last light faded off the pond, and inside their son was singing something tuneless as he changed his wet clothes, and the house was warm, and no one was watching the door. "Ask me tomorrow," she said. And she smiled, and she took his hand, and this time it was a decision. Ask me every tomorrow, and one of these days, Roman Vance, the answer's going to be yes. Maybe it already is, but you don't get to have it easy. You made me wait 7 years. You can wait a little. Roman laughed and pulled her in and held her while the light died and their son sang in the next room, and for the first time in 7 years, neither of them was afraid of what tomorrow would bring. Because the man from the past was gone. The ghost was gone. The Mafia boss was gone. And what was left standing in a warm kitchen with pond water on his shoes and a woman's hand in his was just a father who had kept his promise. He had said he wasn't leaving again. And he never did. 5 years passed the way good years do, quietly, without anyone marking the exact moment the fear finally let go. Noah was 11 now, and taller than Lena liked to admit, and he still read books that grown men avoided, though these days they were about physics and cryptography and the migratory patterns of birds nobody else had ever heard of. He still folded terrible paper swans. He'd made peace with the fact that he would never be good at it, and he folded them anyway, badly on purpose, because it made his father laugh, and making his father laugh had become one of the boys' quiet projects. The small town had become home. Roman ran a hardware store now, of all things a real one, with a real register and real customers who called him by his first name, and had no idea that the calm, careful man who cut their keys and mixed their paint had once made an entire city go silent when he walked into a room. He was good at it. He'd always been good at watching what people needed and giving it to them before they asked. It turned out that skill worked just as well on a woman looking for the right shade of blue for a nursery as it had on anything else. Lena had gone back to school. At 36, she sat in community college classrooms with kids half her age and studied nursing because the night she dug a bullet out of a man on a dusty couch in a dead man's lake house, she'd discovered something about herself. That she was steady when it counted, that her hands didn't shake when everyone else's did, that she'd been keeping people alive her whole life, one scraped knee and one late shift and one impossible secret at a time, and she might as well get paid for it and get a license to prove it. They were by then married. It had happened without ceremony, the way the best things in their life happened. No mafia, no war, just a Tuesday, a courthouse, and a 6-year-old boy who was 7 by then serving as the only witness, holding a bouquet of dandelions he'd picked from the courthouse lawn because Noah did not believe in buying flowers when the ground gave them away for free. Roman had cried. Lena had not, and had teased him about it for 4 years since. But this part of the story doesn't begin with any of that. It begins with a knock on the door of the hardware store on an ordinary autumn afternoon, and the man standing on the other side of it. Danny. He was heavier now, gray coming in at the temples, wearing a suit that actually fit him instead of one bought to hide a gun. He stood in the doorway of the hardware store with his hat literally in his hands, and Roman came around the counter slowly, and for a moment the two men just looked at each other across 5 years and a whole other life. "Boss," Danny said. "I'm not the boss anymore, Danny. I sell nails." "Yeah." Danny's throat worked. "Yeah, I heard. I didn't believe it till right now, standing here looking at you in an apron." Roman looked down at the apron. He'd forgotten he was wearing it. Something in his chest loosened, and he crossed the last few feet and pulled Danny into an embrace, the kind of embrace men in their old world never allowed themselves because it left your back exposed. "You're rich and annoying," Roman said into his shoulder. "I promised you rich and annoying." "You did." Danny pulled back, wiping his eyes without shame. "You wired me enough money to disappear for the rest of my life. I bought a boat. I named it after you. It's a real ugly boat, boss. You'd hate it." Roman laughed, and it was the easy laugh now, the one with nothing underneath it. "Why are you here, Danny?" he said gently. "You didn't drive all this way to tell me about a boat." And Danny's face changed, and the old carefulness came back into it, the watchfulness of a man who'd spent his life reading rooms, and Roman felt the years fall away, and the old cold settle into his spine before Danny even said the words. "It's Calloway," Danny said. "He's out." The store went very quiet. Roman had made a deal 5 years ago with people whose names he never spoke aloud. Calloway had gone to a federal facility on charges built from the map of names, the thread Roman had pulled, until the whole rival organization unraveled. It was supposed to be a long time. It was supposed to be most of a lifetime. How? Roman said. Cooperation, information. He spent 5 years trading everything he knew for years off his sentence, and he knew a lot, boss. He knew enough. Danny turned the hat over in his hands. He walked out 3 weeks ago. I only found out because I keep ears in the old places. I came straight here. I didn't tell anyone where you are. I still don't know where you are, not the house, just the store. And I'll forget the store the second I leave if you want me to. He met Roman's eyes. But I couldn't let him surface without you knowing. Not after last time. Not after what silence cost you. Roman stood very still for a long moment, and then he did something Danny didn't expect. He took off the apron, folded it, set it on the counter, and said, "Come to dinner." Danny blinked. "Boss, you drove 9 hours to warn me my old enemy is free. You're not turning around and driving 9 hours back on a gas station sandwich. Come to dinner. Meet the boy properly. He was 6 the last time you saw him, and he threw up in your car." "He did throw up in my car," Danny said faintly. "I forgot about that." "He hasn't. He apologizes for it about once a year. He's very thorough." That night at the small kitchen table in the small warm house, 3 worlds sat down together. Lena, who'd been told everything the moment Roman walked in the door, because there was no more silence between them, ever. Danny, who kept glancing at the ordinary domesticity of it all, like a man who'd wandered into a dream. And Noah, 11 now, who studied Danny across the table with the same clear, calm, terrible eyes he'd had at 6. "You're the one who took the loud car," Noah said, before anyone had picked up a fork. "The night we left the lake house. You drove toward the city so the bad men would follow you instead of us. So they'd do things to you to find out where we went." Danny went still. "Your dad tell you that?" "No." Noah served himself potatoes. "I figured it out that night. There were 2 cars and only one road, and Dad wouldn't split us up unless one car was a decoy, and you were driving the loud one, so it was you." He looked up. "I was scared for you. I didn't say it because Mom was already scared enough, and Dad was bleeding. But I was scared for you the whole first hour until Dad said you'd made it out." He paused. "Thank you. For being scared so we didn't have to be." The table was silent. Danny, a hard man who'd survived a hard life, put down his fork and pressed the back of his hand to his mouth and looked away, and Lena reached over and squeezed his arm, and Roman looked at his son with the same wonder he'd worn 11 years ago in a Chicago restaurant. "Kid," Danny managed finally, "you are exactly like your old man, except you say the things out loud that he never could." "I know," Noah said. "Someone has to." After Noah went to bed, the 3 adults sat up late, and the conversation turned, as it had to Calloway. "You want me to make him disappear," Danny said quietly. "I still know people. Say the word boss and it's handled and it never touches you or the family." "No," Roman said. "Roman." "No, Danny." Roman's voice was calm, but it was the old calm, the one that used to make rooms go silent. "That's the thing about a man like Calloway. He builds his whole life on the belief that everyone is secretly like him, that loyalty has a price, that kindness is a strategy, that a family is just a weakness waiting to be leveraged. 5 years ago, he almost broke me and Lena apart with a single sentence, remember? He found the one thing we couldn't quite trust about each other, and he pressed on it. That's all he does. He finds the crack, and he waits. "So what?" Danny said. "You let him come. You sit here in your house full of the people he wants, and you wait for him to find the crack." Roman looked at Lena, and Lena, who had spent 7 years in silence and 5 years learning what it felt like not to look back at him, and gave him the smallest nod. "There is no crack anymore," Roman said. "That's what he'll never understand. That's what a man like him can't calculate. 5 years ago, there were 100 things Lena and I didn't trust about each other. We were strangers wearing the faces of 2 people who used to love each other. He could get between us because there was a between to get into." He reached across the table and took his wife's hand. "There isn't anymore. There's nothing he can whisper to her about me that she doesn't already know. There's nothing he can show me about her that would move me an inch. He built his whole art on the space between people, and this family doesn't have any space left in it." Danny stared at the two of them, hands clasped on the table, and something in his face went soft and sad and hopeful all at once. "You're gonna beat him by being happy," he said slowly. "That's the plan. That's the whole plan." "That's the whole plan," Roman said. "I'll take precautions. I'm not a fool. The house has more locks than a house needs, and I'll add more. I'll know if he comes near this town before his engine's cold because I've spent 5 years quietly making sure I'd know. But I'm not going to hunt him, and I'm not going to hide from him, and I'm not going to hand him the one thing he actually wants, which is to make me into a scared man in the dark again, because that's the only real victory left to him, not taking Noah. He can't take Noah, but making me spend the rest of my life afraid he might, that I can give him or withhold, and I choose withhold. Calloway came, of course. Roman had known he would. It was 6 weeks later, a cold morning, and Roman was opening the hardware store when a car he didn't recognize parked across the street, and a man got out, older, now, thinner, the gray gone to white, the pleasant ordinary face gone gaunt from 5 years inside. But the eyes were the same, smooth, patient. Reading the room even now, even here on an empty street in a town that had never heard his name. Roman didn't reach for a weapon because he wasn't carrying one, because he'd decided 5 years ago that the man he wanted to be didn't carry one to open a hardware store. "Calloway," he said. "Roman." Calloway crossed the street slowly. "You look well. You look, God help me, content. I wasn't sure I believed it until I saw it." He stopped a few feet away. "A hardware store. The most feared man in Chicago sells hammers now. I sell a lot of things. Paint's the big one, actually. People are always repainting." Calloway smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, and Roman could see him working, could see him searching 5 years of prison, sharpening the one skill he had, hunting for the crack, the space, the thing he could press. "I came a long way to talk to you," Calloway said. "I spent 5 years thinking about our last conversation, in that cabin. Your son took me apart in 10 seconds, Roman. Solved the whole thing while I was still trying to break his mother's trust. I've never forgotten it. I've thought about that boy every day for 5 years. And there it was. The thing Roman had known he would reach for. Not a gun, not a threat, just Noah. Always Noah. The one lever Calloway believed could still move him. Roman waited to feel the fear. He'd braced for it. 5 years of peace, and he'd assumed that the moment this man said his son's name out loud on this street, the old terror would come flooding back. It didn't come. Instead, standing there in the cold morning, Roman felt something he hadn't expected at all. He felt sorry for him. "You still think he's a weapon?" Roman said quietly. 5 years to think about him, and that's still all you see. Something to be developed, trained, owned. He shook his head slowly. "You know what he did last week? He spent 4 hours helping the Hendricks girl down the street with her science project for free because she was crying about it, and he can't stand it when someone's stuck on a problem they're smart enough to solve. He didn't get anything for it. There was no angle. He just can't watch a person struggle with something he could fix." Roman met the old man's eyes. "That's what he is, Calloway. That's what you never understood you were looking at. He doesn't see people as pieces on a board. He sees them clearly, and then he helps them. That's the whole difference between what you wanted to make him and what he actually became. And it happened because he grew up in a house with no space in it, no cracks, nothing to leverage, just people who love each other out loud." Calloway stared at him for a long moment. "You really did it," he said finally. And his voice had changed, had lost its smoothness, had become just the voice of a tired old man on a cold street. "You built something I can't get into. I spent the whole drive here looking for the way in. I couldn't find one. There's no fear in you. There's nothing between you and her. There's nothing I can say about the boy that you don't already know and love." He laughed hollow and small. "I've spent my whole life certain that every family was just a lock I hadn't picked yet. And I'm standing in front of the one lock I can't pick, and it turns out the reason I can't pick it is that it isn't locked at all. It's just open. It's just a door that anyone could walk through, and no one wants to walk through it to hurt you because you fill it with so much of the other thing that there's no room left for anything else." "Yeah," Roman said. "That's about right." Calloway was quiet. "I'm not going to do anything," he said at last. "I want you to know that. I didn't come to hurt anyone. I came because I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to know if it was real, the thing you said in the cabin, about how you look at him and see the only thing you've ever done that was worth anything." He looked down at his own hands, old, now empty. "I never had that, Roman. Not once. Not the boy version, and not the grown version. There was never a single person I looked at that way, or who looked at me that way. And I told myself for 60 years that it was because I was smarter than everyone, that love was just a weakness other people had that I'd evolved past." His voice cracked barely. "Standing here, I think maybe I just never had it, and I built a whole life around pretending I didn't want it." Roman looked at the man who had hunted his family across an entire state, who had nearly cost him everything, who had walked through the water to sit in his last chair by his cold fireplace, and he felt no triumph. He felt only the strange, sad clarity of a man looking at what he might have become if a boy at a restaurant counter hadn't looked up from a library book 11 years ago and had his eyes. "You want to know what I think?" Roman said. "I don't know that I do." "I think you should go somewhere quiet," Roman said, "somewhere far from all of it, and I think you should find one person, just one, a neighbor, a dog, a kid who needs help with a science project, and I think you should help them for no reason, expecting nothing, and I think you should notice how it feels, and then do it again the next day, and I think if you do that enough times some morning years from now, you might wake up and find you've grown one late when you thought it was impossible, the thing you never had." Roman held his gaze. "It's not too late. I know it feels too late. I felt like it was too late for me, and then I walked into a restaurant on a rainy Tuesday, and it wasn't. It's never actually too late. That's the thing nobody tells you." Calloway stood on the empty street for a long time. Then he nodded once slowly and turned and walked back to his car, and Roman watched him drive away and knew the way he'd once known which men were his and which were the enemies, that he would never see him again. He didn't. Calloway kept his word. Whatever happened to the old man after that morning, it happened far away, and it never touched them. And years later, Danny would report almost in disbelief that Calloway had died old and quiet in a small town on the other side of the country, and that at his funeral of all things, there had been a young woman crying, a neighbor, who told anyone who'd listen that the strange old man next door had spent the last years of his life helping her raise her son after her husband left, expecting nothing, asking for nothing, teaching the boy chess and how to read people and how to be kind about it. "He grew one," Roman said quietly when Danny told him. "At the very end, he actually grew one." Lena, standing beside him, took his hand. "Because you told him it wasn't too late." "Because it wasn't," Roman said. "It never is. That's the whole thing, Lena. That's the whole story. It's never too late to become the person you should have been all along." Noah went to college early at 16 because there was nothing left the high school could teach him, and everyone had finally stopped pretending otherwise. He studied things Roman didn't understand, and Lena studied alongside him just to keep up. And he came home every holiday taller each time, and he still folded terrible paper swans, and he still made his father laugh, and he never once in all his growing up forgot the two things that had shaped his whole life, that his father was the wall, and that the wall never left. On the night before Noah moved out for good, out into a life of his own, into whatever brilliant, quiet thing he was going to build with those clear, terrible eyes, he sat on the porch with his father and watched the last light die off the pond behind the trees. "I remember the restaurant," Noah said. "You know that people think I was too young. I remember all of it, the rain, the men by the door, the way you put yourself between me and the window before you even knew I was yours." He was quiet for a moment. "I remember thinking that's the dad from my drawing, and I remember being right." "You're always right," Roman said. "It's your most annoying quality." "I get it from Mom." Noah smiled. Then the smile faded, and he looked at his father with the seriousness of the small judge he'd been at 6, grown now into a man. "You kept every promise. You know that on the safe house floor bleeding, you said you weren't leaving, and you didn't. Every single day of my whole life you didn't leave. Do you know how rare that is? I've read the studies. I've seen the numbers. Fathers leave. That's the pattern. You broke the pattern." His voice caught, just slightly, the too fast thing his father had taught him never to hide. You were unpredictable to a man who could predict anything, and you stayed unpredictable your whole life. You just kept staying, forever, when the whole world expected you to go. And Isaiah... Roman couldn't speak for a moment. "You want to know a secret," he said finally. "Always. The night I walked into that restaurant, I was a man who'd already decided he was going to die young and alone. I'd made my peace with it. It made me fearless. It made me good at a terrible life." Roman looked at his son, and then a 6-year-old at a counter looked up from a book about octopuses, and he had my eyes, and everything I'd made peace with came undone. "You didn't just give me a reason to live, Noah. You gave me a reason to become somebody worth living. Every good thing I ever did, I did because of the boy who told me to come back. Every single one." Noah reached over and put his hand on the scar on his father's jaw, the way he'd done at 6 and at 11 and now grown. "Then we're even," Noah said, "because everything good I'll ever do, I'll do because of the man who came back." They sat there in the dark, the father and the son, while inside the warm house, the woman who'd survived all of it moved between the rooms, and the last light faded off the small gray water, and no one anywhere was afraid. The man from the past was gone. The ghost was gone. The Mafia boss was gone. And what remained sitting on a porch in the dark, with his grown son's hand on the scar that marked everything he'd survived, was exactly what he'd promised to be on a bloody floor 11 years before. A father who came back, and who never ever left again.